IB Nation, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel. It's Monday, February 16th, and first and foremost, the best part about today is it is my wife Angela's birthday. Unfortunately, she is not here today, but we will celebrate, and I took her out to dinner before she left, but just in case she's listening, I know she likes to listen to the show. Happy birthday to my beautiful wife, another 30th birthday for you. Hope you enjoy the great weather down in Arizona and have a great time today with your mom and your stepdad. So hope you guys have a blast, and I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Also, it's my nephew Zachary's birthday. I also want to wish him a happy birthday as well. So I am ready to rock and roll here today. We have loads of great questions. So today we are obviously it's going to be our a buy so hold show, which is our new Monday deal during the off season. So we have put a post on the board, the premium message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com, Champions Lounge. And if you're a premium member, you are able to submit a question in the thread that Salty has launched, and just kind of leave whatever kind of buy you want to posit a scenario. We either buy it, sell it, or hold it. It's not a question per se. It's not, will CJ Carr win the Heisman Trophy? Yes or no. It's more of a CJ Carr will win the Heisman Trophy. Buy, sell, or hold that. And then we talk about it. So that's kind of how it is. And it makes it a little bit different than a question where it's just more open-ended type of thing. If you want to leave a buy, sell, hold and did not get to submit one, or if you're not a premium member, you can always make sure you just go on to YouTube and leave a super chat. I always say, as much as I would love a super chat and always appreciate super chats, if you're going to leave a buy, sell, hold and pay money for it, I would much rather you just go sign up for a membership to the premium board, and you'll really enjoy being part of that community and the great content that we have on that site. But it's always best, and then you can do buy, sell, holds forever. And so that's definitely the best way to go. So we're going to get things kicked off here today, and I'm very excited about these submissions. There's a lot of great submissions today, and I always enjoy just kind of hearing what's on your guys' minds, right? Like, we have to come up with show ideas every day, and sometimes it's just nice to be like, okay, what do the people want to hear about? You know, what do the people want to discuss? What do they want to what's on their mind? I know what I want to talk about all the time. I know what's kind of interests me or whatever the case may be. And sometimes it's not what you guys think is interesting, and sometimes it's even better or more entertaining. And that's what I love about the buy, so hold, because we get to talk about what you guys want to talk about. So we're going to get things kicked off here today. And of course, we have Salty got the thread up, and when he gets the thread up, we allow him to kick things off. So here is Salty's buy, so hold submission. Buy, so hold. Should Jaden Greathouse and the other wide receivers plus tight ends play at or near their ceilings, and CJ Carr plays at or near his year 2 ceiling in a fully developed Denbrock aerial offense, Notre Dame's passing offense will be one of the Power 4 top 3 in touchdowns and total receiving yards, and they won't be number 3. Okay, so top 3 in touchdowns and total receiving yards, which basically means passing yards. So there's a couple ways to go with this. Number one is if Notre Dame plays 15, 16 games, then obviously you have a better shot at doing that. But if we're talking, say, something that's more comparable, where if we're looking at the same number of games by the end of the regular season, will Notre Dame be top 3, actually top 2? I mean, that's basically what you're saying, is they're going to be top 2 in touchdowns and total receiving yards. I'm going to say no. I'm going to sell that. And the reason I'm going to sell that is because, yes, Notre Dame is absolutely going to be more effective this year, or I shouldn't say more effective. We don't know if they're going to be more effective. They're going to certainly be more involved in the pass game this year. I think it's going to be a bigger part of what they're going to do, but I don't know that it's something where Mike Denbrock's offense is going to be so geared towards the pass that they're going to be able to put up numbers that are similar to the top passing teams in the country. I mean, look, even in 2023, when Jaden Daniels won the Heisman Trophy, they were 3rd in passing yards that season, and I don't think that team ran the ball as well as this team is going to run the football. with other than obviously Jaden Daniels was a pretty good running the ball, but overall, I mean, they were 180 some yards. This is a team that still wants to be balanced. And while I think this offense could certainly be top 5 to 8 in total yards, I certainly think they are. I would be a little surprised if in like a 12-game regular season they're there in yards. I could see it in touchdowns, however. There's some things that have to break out, but again, in LSU with LSU in 2023, not only did they have Jaden Daniels, and I could see CJ Carr kind of matching Jaden Daniels as a passer, just in theory. I don't even if the receivers max out their potential, I don't see a Malik Neighbors on this team. I don't see a Brian Thomas necessarily on this team, at least not in 2026. Maybe a Quincy Porter or a Cam Williams or a Mylan Graham or somebody like that becomes that kind of guy in 2027, but I don't know if we're going to see that in 2026. So I think that when I look at it, I top 5 to 8 certainly is possible, but I want to pump the brakes a little bit on this notion that Notre Dame's going to be throwing so much that they're going to be here from a number 3 standpoint, because it's not even so much salty about the aspects of guys playing to their potential and the talent and all those other kind of things. It really just comes down to, will they throw enough to get there? So when I look at, obviously college football this past season, if you go look at last year, and Ole Miss passed for 4,700 yards last year, over 300 yards a game. Well, as of right now, they're going to have Trinidad Chambliss back. You look at Miami last year, 2 years ago, when they had Cam Ward, they passed for over 4,500 yards that year. I think their offense in 25 is going to look a lot more like what they had in 2024 than it was their pass offense in 2026 with Darian Mensah and Malachi Toney and Cooper Barcotti is going to look a lot more like the pass offense and the offense that we saw in 2024 than it will the pass offense in 2025. You have Eric Morris going to Oklahoma State. So last year, North Texas had the number 2 passing offense in the country from a total yard standpoint, and they were number 2 from a yards per game standpoint. Now they're going to move up to the Power 5 level. Now we don't know if the production will be the same as it was at the G5 level, but he basically took his best players from North Texas, went out and got some other portal players, and obviously Oklahoma State has some P4 guys coming back. So, I don't know that I'm super ready to say that Notre Dame is going to be this team that just throws it so much and so explosively and so efficiently that they're going to rank in the top 2 in passing yards total. That is where I kind of sell it at this point in time. So I get where you're coming from. I think where I would say I want to see this team show that the statistical improvement, honestly, salty, and because again, I like where your submission is at. I think you're in a good place, but last year Notre Dame was 4th in passer efficiency, and they were well behind number 2. I mean, like 8 points behind number 2. They're very close to number 3, but they were 8 points behind number 2, and they were 17 points behind number 1. I'd like to see the efficiency get to that level. And why? What is the difference? Well, yards per attempt, they were right there. Notre Dame was at 9.5. The 2 teams I'm talking about that were 1 and 2 were Indiana and Ohio State. Indiana was at 9.4 yards per attempt. Ohio State was at 9.2 yards per attempt. Where were their big differences? Notre Dame only threw 25 touchdown passes. And if you add, there'd be 2 more onto it if they played in a postseason game to get to, actually be 2 postseason games to get to where Ohio State was. They'd still only be at 29, where Ohio State was at 33. The other thing is Ohio State completed passes at a higher level. I don't expect Notre Dame to get up to 76.7, nor do I want to, because they didn't push the ball down the field nearly enough. But Indiana at 71.9, that's possible. But the difference with Indiana is the 46-7 touchdown to interception ratio. And CJ Carr didn't throw a lot of picks last year, and I don't expect him to throw a lot of picks this year. But I think the touchdown number can and should get a lot higher. If Notre Dame played the number of games that Indiana played and kept their same touchdown rate we saw last season, I'm just going to do the math here real quick. They're at 33 touchdown passes compared to 46 for Indiana. That's an area that I'd like to see a lot of improvement. And that's an area where, honestly, that's going to be due to the receivers improving. Because in order for You just don't see quarterbacks throw, in an offense like Notre Dame. It's more of a pro style offense. You don't see quarterbacks throw a ton of touchdown passes, inside the 7, inside the 5. You just don't see that as much. North Texas did a decent number of that, but that's unique to the style of offense that they run. What you see is a lot of longer touchdown passes, 15, 20 plus yard touchdown passes. And certainly you'll still have your red zone touchdown passes and things like that. But to get up to that 40-plus number over the course of a 15, 16-game season, your receivers are going to have to create more big play touchdowns than even what we saw last season from Notre Dame. And we certainly saw a jump from last season compared to what we've seen as far as big plays in the pass game from a touchdown standpoint. But there's got to be another jump for Notre Dame if they're going to get into the level that we're talking about. Those are two areas that I think we could see some improvement. All right, let's get to the next one from B Jammin 41. B Jammin says this is the deepest and most talented Notre Dame defensive. This is the deepest and most talented defensive line Notre Dame has had in 30 years. Deepest, I will say, if deepest and most talented. If we're talking starting lineup, no, it's not the most talented starting lineup. I would argue that the 2018 defensive line had an even more talented starting lineup based on what we know about what that unit was and what we know about what this unit is. Could it end up being better? Certainly. If Bryce Young has a breakout, if some other guys kind of take that next step. But, that team also had Jerry Tillery at D tackle. He was a first-round NFL draft pick. So the starting talent, no. Depth of talent, absolutely. The concern I have is the depth at end, however. So in 2018, your depth at defensive end was actually better than the depth that we have now because you had Dalen Hayes and Adetokunbo Ogundeji coming back, who had played the year before, but they really jumped up and performed even better. But you had 4 legit NFL players in the rotation that year. 2026, you've got 2 for sure. I know we're all excited about Keon, but he still has a lot to prove. And then we don't know who the 4th is going to be. So that's a bit of a question mark. But that was also the issue that you had in 2018 with the D tackles. After you got to the start, you got Jerry Tillery, but then your other starter was Jonathan Bonner, nice, solid player, not a high-level NFL guy. And then after that, you had young Kurt Heinisch and young Myron Tungvalomosa. And so the depth at D tackle was not great, kind of like we see at DN this year. But the talent that's potentially competing for those spots in 2026 is better. So I would say that I'll give the advantage from a depth standpoint to this current D line. Starting talent standpoint, I think that's still up for debate. Depth of talent, absolutely it is. So I'll buy it if we're talking about from a depth of talent standpoint. I'll buy it. Starting lineup still has a little bit more to prove, which I'm okay with because I would argue last year's defensive line was one of the deepest that we've seen at Notre Dame in a long time. And this unit could and should be even better. Also from B Jam and Bice, hold if the kicking inconsistencies in the red zone offense don't I'm having trouble reading today. Don't drastically improve, Notre Dame will not win a championship in 2026. I'm going to sell on the kicking inconsistency and I'll buy on the red zone offense. I do think that the red zone offense has to get better. And it didn't necessarily hurt them last year. It almost did, though. They didn't lose to Miami and Texas A&M because, their red zone offense wasn't great. It was more so, you were fortunate to recover a fumble. There's certainly areas for it to get better. But had you played the way you did all year, Notre Dame in the first 2 games, what's ironic is Notre Dame was a perfect 100% in the first 2 games in the red zone. They were 8 out of 8. 6 of those 8 were touchdowns. That's pretty good. The red zone offense was pretty good. If you take that percentage of 75%, I'm going to look up the national rankings from last year, and you look at red zone offense last season, and you look at what the top touchdown percentages were, their 75% touchdown rate would have tied for 6th in the country last year. and been 5th amongst Power 5 teams. So that's pretty good, and obviously 100% would have been by far number one. So it wasn't those 2 games that they lost where you saw the red zone was the problem. Having said that, if you would have had a similar red zone performance in the playoffs like you had against USC, like you had against NC State, like you had against Boston College, like you had, in some of those other games last season, then yeah, that's going to be a problem for Notre Dame, and they're going to have to improve in that regard. And so the kicking aspect of that is really the big key. The red zone touchdown offense was okay, but it needs to absolutely be better. That could cost them a championship in 2026. The kicking stuff, I'm not as concerned about that. I've pointed this out before, guys. Alabama's had some terrible kicking situations and still won championships. I think of the 2011 season that they won. I mean, they lost to LSU at home because they couldn't make field goals. I mean, their kicking operation in those years were not good. There were some years they were good. 2009, they were pretty darn good. Kicking field goals and extra points. In 2011, they weren't great at it. From what I remember, I'm looking at the stats now. Went 23 of 36 in 2011. That's 63.9%. That's not good. One of their kickers went 2 of 9. The other one went 21 of 27. See where they were in 2012. They were 15 of 20 in 2012, which is good, but they didn't kick it a whole lot. 2015, Alabama's kicking game, they went 23 of 33. They were sub 70%, which is not good that season. So as you can see, there's plenty of years where Alabama didn't have a very good kicking situation. They were 19 of 28 in 2017. That's sub 70%. That's also not good. Now, again, Notre Dame's been in the 50s, and it's going to have to get better than that. But it's still a situation where I say I don't think that's what it's going to come down to. It's going to be more so you can't punch it into the end zone. That's going to be my bigger concern than anything else. Got some more from BJM. He goes, buy one, sell one, hold one. Notre Dame has a 12-sack player, a 1,000-yard receiver, and a 5-interception player. Buy the 5-interception player because they've had one each of the last, I think, 3 years. So you had Leonard Moore had 5 last year, and Tay Johnson was close at 4. And he only played 10 games. If Tay plays 12 games, he's probably at 5 as well. Xavier Watts had 6 in 2024, and then Xavier had 7 in 2023. Benjamin Morrison had 6 in 2022. So in the last 4 years, you've had a guy with at least 5 every year and 6 in 3 of those 4 years. So I'll buy that one. That continues to trend. 12-sack players I want to hold. I certainly think that's possible. And then I'll sell a 1,000-yard receiver. I'll have to believe that when I see it for that one. Buy, sell, hold from BJM, and every year it happens. A team starts in the top 15 and ends up not ranked. Buy, sell, hold. This year it will be LSU, Texas A&M, or Oklahoma. That is a good one because I kind of like all of those teams coming back. Buy, sell, hold that. Well, let's assume for the sake of argument that all 3 of those teams are ranked in the top 15. Let me just look at some schedules real quick. First of all, I think the team that I'm most likely would predict won't be in there right now would be LSU. LSU has a lot to prove this year. They do get Texas A&M at home. They do get Bama at home and Texas at home. And they still have to play at Ole Miss. We don't know how good they're going to be. They got to play at Kentucky, at Auburn, who should be improved, at Tennessee, and at Arkansas. So that schedule's more favorable. Texas A&M schedule is a little bit tougher this year. They play at LSU, at Missouri, at Alabama, at South Carolina, at Oklahoma. Oof. They have Texas and Tennessee at home, Arkansas at home, at South Carolina as well, and then Arizona State at home. So, and then Texas this year has a pretty tough schedule. They got Ohio State at home. They have to play Florida at home, Ole Miss at home, Arkansas at home, and then they have to play at Tennessee, Oklahoma in Dallas, at Missouri, at LSU, at Texas A&M. So, I'm going to buy Oklahoma. I'm going to buy Texas A&M because I think their schedule's tougher. I'm going to hold because we're saying ends up not ranked. So I'm going to buy Oklahoma or Texas A&M. I'm going to hold LSU, and I'm going to sell Oklahoma. I actually like this Oklahoma team coming back. And I know their schedule's challenging, but I like this Oklahoma team. I think you're going to see a healthier John Mateer. I think you're going to see a healthier offensive line situation. They do have some talented receivers coming back. They went and got some good receivers from the portal. So I think that's going to be the case. And with LSU, it's just there's the unknown. Jay Melvin in the chat says, I think LSU could be really good next year. Yeah, they could. I could also see them losing 4 or 5 games. It's so much of it's unknown when you're talking about a team that's basically rebuilding from scratch. The coaching staff is mostly rebuilt. The roster's mostly rebuilt. The O-line's a portal-built offensive line primarily. The new quarterback, a bunch of new receivers from the portal, a bunch of new defensive players from the portal. The only thing that you're really still homegrown is running back and tight end. That's really it. And it's so hit or miss. And I know Lane Kiffin did a good job of that at Ole Miss, but this is a different animal. So it's really the unknown, and that's what makes LSU hard to predict. I could see LSU finishing outside the top 25, and I could see LSU making a run in the playoffs with the talent they have. There's so much unknowns. A big part of it for me, though, I'm not as high on Sam Leavitt as a lot of other people. And that's why my optimism for LSU is not quite as high as maybe some other people. Love their running back room. Receiver room should be good. Offensive line, we'll see. It should be improved. Defense will have talent, like their D coordinator. But I'm not super high on Sam Leavitt. That's one that I don't see. He's got to show me some. I know he led Arizona State to a playoff berth in 2024, but that was more about, in my opinion, that was more about the run game than it was anything else. And when you talk about Hassan Longstreet, what has he ever done to show that he's ready to be a top player in college football? What has he done besides be a highly ranked recruit? Like, seriously, what has he shown you in college football to make you think he could lead LSU to a deep playoff run? Like, that's the thing, is like we're still going off of high school rankings for a player like that. I'm not going to predict the team to be in the playoffs because of a transfer quarterback who's never played a meaningful down of college football. I don't see it. They're going to they have a lot to prove. But again, that's what makes them difficult to evaluate, in my opinion. Good one, B Jammin. Those are 3 good options as well. There's another for B Jammin. By so hold, Miami will not be our toughest game in 2026. It will be a team Indy overlooks. Yeah, see, this is, to me, you're conflating 2 different things. A toughest game and how it plays out is not, to me, what we're talking about when we're talking about Miami being the toughest game. When people say that Miami will be Notre Dame's toughest game, it's not a prediction on how the game will play out. It's about who is the toughest, who's the best opponent. I refuse to believe that Northern Illinois was a tougher game for Notre Dame from that standpoint than, let's say, Georgia or Penn State. Yes, Northern Illinois beat Notre Dame, but Notre Dame wasn't as up for that game. Riley Leonard got hurt in the first drive of the game. There were several issues in that game that meant they did not play well. It didn't mean that Northern Illinois was a tougher game in how we define what a tough game is or not. It was a bad game. It's a terrible game. It wasn't a game that I would look at and say, oh, gee, that was their toughest game when we're talking about deciding it. So I think you're kind of talking more along the lines of like a trap game type of thing. When we talk about what will the toughest game be, it's looking at it from the standpoint of who's the best team. And to me, I look at it and say, I think Miami and BYU will be the 2 toughest games next year. Miami, because it's the best team and the best roster they're going to face. BYU is second or third in regards to best roster. They're debating with SMU and some other teams on that. But playing in Provo makes that a tough game. And that's why I put BYU number 2. But there's no without knowing how the games play out, there's no team that I can say is going to be the toughest opponent besides Miami. So I'm going to sell that one. Next one from B Jammin 41. In honor of Valentine's Day, best chocolate-covered treats. Buy, sell, hold. Buy one, sell one, hold on. We'll just do that. Chocolate-covered pretzels, chocolate-covered peanuts, chocolate-covered caramels. Well, see, here's the thing, B Jammin. If you're asking me, what are the best Valentine's Day treats, then I have to go with whatever my wife likes the most. And so that would be more of her thing. I think she likes, of those three, I'd say she probably likes chocolate covered pretzels the most, then chocolate covered caramels, and then chocolate covered peanuts would be last, would be my guess. For me personally, I love chocolate caramels. Like, love them. Like, there's this when we lived out in Colorado, all you people out west, and well, actually everybody knows this because they sell them, but like they were more readily available out west. But used to love getting See's candies, SEE See's candies back when we lived in Colorado for Valentine's or birthdays or whatever, or just because I passed by one and saw one. But I would get the and they had a store you could go in and pick out whatever you want. And when Ange and I would do that, I'd get nothing but different types of chocolate covered caramels. That's one of my favorite sweet tooth snacks. Now I would not eat that now because I'm cutting sugar out and a lot of different things. So I haven't had anything like that in a while, but that would be my Valentine's Day choice of that one. So hope you guys all had a good Valentine's Day, by the way, all of you that celebrated it. I was not able to do that because my wife was out of town. D. Troll Hunter, he had some really good submissions today. So let's kick things off with his first one. Buy, sell, hold. It is not just a coincidence to see in the Marcus Freeman era an increase in recruiting areas with direct flights to South Bend. It's an interesting situation. So, first of all, not every kid that comes and visits Notre Dame, even now today, flies into South Bend. It can still be pretty challenging to get to South Bend from certain parts of the country. I know someone who does a lot of Uber rides for prospects, and he's had to go to Chicago even within the last year and pick guys up. So it depends on the player. I don't think it hurts that you're able to do that. I don't think it hurts. I don't think that's a driver. Like if Marcus Freeman was still recruiting at Notre Dame now and South Bend Airport was not enhanced like it has been, I don't think we'd see a noticeable difference in recruiting. I think it's more about Marcus Freeman. It's more about the staff he's hired. It's more about the success they've had on the field. It's more about the support from the institution. I'm going to sell that it's a result of that. But I will say this, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt at all. All right, let's get to another one from Detroit Hunter. He says, buy, so hold. Mike Norvell is no longer the coach at FSU by the Clemson game. So let me pull up when the Clemson game is going to be. Let's see here. Florida State 2026. That's October 31st. Man, and they will have had a bye and then at Louisville and at Miami and back-to-back games before that at Alabama. Boy, that's a tough one. So I get where you're coming from, Detroit Hunter, but part of me wants to buy it from a football standpoint. But the thing that gives me hesitation is not that you could be wrong. There's two things that give me hesitation. One is I don't know what Florida State's going to be this year. Again, these portal teams are so hard to evaluate. But we've seen two pretty bad years in a row from Florida State, so I don't have a lot of optimism they're going to turn things around, especially when you look at their schedule. They have to play SMU at home, Virginia at home, Clemson at home, NC State at home, Florida at home. They also have road games at Alabama, at Louisville, at Miami, at Boston College, and at Pitt this season. That's by no means an easy stretch. They also randomly play Central Arkansas and New Mexico State, which is just garbage for a team from Florida to play. Those two teams, but whatever. But the other part too is financially, can they afford to do that? You know, like NH just said it, like she said it, like, do they have the boosters that will pay that buyout? That's my question. I mean, there's been a bunch of stories the last couple of weeks about Florida State's in this massive debt, $400+ million, which again is a little bit misleading, but like that was an issue that they had this year is could they afford to buy that out? That contract out. That's a tough one. And that's really where my hesitation is, honestly, Detroit Hunters. Can they afford to buy out? It gets to a point in time where it's like, you've just got to do it. I mean, there's a lot of people said LSU couldn't afford, was going to have trouble buying out Brian Kelly, and it gets bad enough that's you're going to make it happen. And that's obviously what we saw this past year. So that's a tough one. I'm going I'm going to buy that, but I don't do it with a lot of conviction because I think they're going to really struggle. And I think they're going to be coming off back-to-back losses going into that bye. I really do. Got another one from Detroit Hunter. Says we will see more situational three-man fronts now that we have some increased size of D tackle and some larger DNs. Well, I mean, more? No, I don't, I'm going to sell more because Notre Dame did a lot of three-man fronts the last couple years as well. I haven't gone back and looked at the numbers, but when you say situational, we're talking about the nickel package. We saw plenty of that. Where I think what you might see is there might be an increase in some three down fronts and base downs. I actually think you could see that, like sort of like a 3-4 type of look, where either Boubacar stands up, or even you could even still have maybe Boubacar on the line. You put a third linebacker on the field, depending on how things go. Yeah, I love where you're at. I'll buy that it's possible for the reasons you talk about. I could see scenarios you have Bryce Young and Keon Keeley end with Francis Brew or Jason Onye or Tion Gray at nose. I could see scenarios where Jason Onye's over the tackle. I could see scenarios where Francis Brew is over the tackle, although I'd probably keep in the nose in that situation. But there's some looks where he could thrive out there, especially if you're going to go in some early down situations. I could see even some scenarios where Tion Gray is over there. I saw him do that at Oregon last year, where he would be more in a 4-eye look than he would in a 3-down front, as opposed to being he wasn't on the nose all the time. He's a pretty good athlete, so I could see that. I could see that. Bice a hold from Detroit Hunter. Josh Hoover is your least favorite quarterback that Cignetti has brought to IU so far from a fit perspective. I'm going to sell that. I'd be very curious where what makes you think that. And I understand the way that you do these questions. You don't always necessarily agree with something. You are just trying to posit an interesting conversation. And I totally get that. But when I look at this, I don't see the bad fit other than he throws too many picks. I think part of the reason he throws too many picks is because that offense is so heavily geared towards the quarterback needing to really thrive, the quarterback needing to really make a ton of plays, the quarterback really needing to dominate the action. I mean, people talk about, Josh Hoover takes too many chances and did this and did that. And my response is like, well, if he didn't, what was the offense going to do? And we're going to run the football. That's not who they are. And so if he wasn't taking chance, if he wasn't being a bit more of a gunslinger, I think that's just kind of how the offense goes. I just think that's kind of how it works. And so, in 2022, when they made the title game, Max Duggan only threw 8 picks, but they had Kendre Miller, who rushed for almost 1,400 yards. He rushed for 1,399 yards. They also had Amari DiMercado that could make plays as a year. Amani Bailey came in at times and made some plays. And then obviously Max Duggan was a runner. That team was built very differently than the one they have now. They averaged over 193 yards per game rushing. This past year, they were 131.4 rushing yards per game. He had to be that. And honestly, when I watch Josh Hoover, one of the things I like about him is, yes, he's going to make some mistakes that other players don't make, but he's going to make some throws that you're going to wish they would make too. So no, that's not even remotely close. Look, Curtis Rourke was the worst one from a fit standpoint because he had severe limitations when it came to some of the tougher throws he could make against better teams. And some of the throws that offense needs to win big games that Fernando Mendoza could make this year, you will not see Curtis Rourke make those throws. Josh Hoover can. So I'm gonna sell that one. I'm gonna sell that one. And now you got to remember too, Detroit Hunter, I've been very high on Josh Hoover for 2 years. So there's no reason for me to not be high on him now, especially going to a place where he's going to have a way better supporting cast. Another one from Detroit Hunter. The upcoming season, we will see far less coaching turnover in both college and the NFL. If Dabo cannot get things back together, he will retire and never coach again. I'm going to, so the thought process is like, look, coaches are still going to be held to the same standard. The problem is you've had so much turnover the last 2 years. So much turnover. There's always gonna be, like, that year where it's just like, okay, so many moves were made that that you just you just run out of having the same number of moves, and I think we could be entering into that situation. Like, we were talking the other day, there was a question, and I can't remember what the question was about, but it was a question about coaches. And so we started looking at the coaches that had kind of been changed over and, like, which coaches are on the hot seat and all these type of things, and we're going down through it, and it's like, man, like, almost so many of these schools have coaches on their first or second year. So if you look at, like, the ACC, Tony Elliott was a guy that was on the hot seat, but is he still on the hot seat after winning, 11 games this past year? Rhett Lashley's doing well. Mario Cristobal's doing well. I could see Pat Narduzzi being on the hot seat. Barring a collapse, I don't see Brent Key being on the hot seat. Manny Diaz just won the ACC this past year. He's not on the hot seat. Dave Dorn could be on the hot seat. Cal has a new coach. You have Dabo, which your next question will get to. Jeff Brom is doing great at Louisville. He's not on the hot seat. Wake's coach is going into year 2. Stanford's got a new coach. Florida State's coach could be on the hot seat. Bill Belichick's going into year 2. James Franklin's a new coach. Bill O'Brien's definitely on the hot seat, and I think Fran Brown will be a little bit on the hot seat if they struggle. So the ACC has a decent amount. It's a little different story in the other leagues, in my opinion. Texas Tech, their coach is good. Kalani Sitake's good. Utah has a new coach. Houston's coach is only going into year 3. He's done a great job so far. The coach at Arizona is doing a great job right now. Kenny Dillingham is doing a great job. Iowa State has a new coach. Kansas State has a new coach. You could argue Sonny Dykes is on the hot seat. They're coming off a 9-win season. They'd have to be pretty bad to fall. I think Scott Satterfield's in the hot seat. Dave Aranda's in the hot seat. I don't think Lance Leopold's in the hot seat. Scott Frost is going into year 2. Rich Rod's going into year 2. Dion could be on the hot seat, and Oklahoma State has a new coach. So a lot of new coaches and guys doing well. Indiana's not Big Ten. Signetti's no. Ohio State, no. Oregon, no. They're doing great. Lincoln Riley, perhaps. Michigan has a new coach. Iowa's coach isn't going anywhere. Jed Fish is doing a good job. Brett Bielema is doing a good job. JP Fleck's doing a good job. Matt Rule could be on the hot seat. Northwestern's coach is doing a good job. UCLA has a new coach. Penn State has a new coach. Rutgers, maybe. Wisconsin, yes, on the hot seat. Michigan State has a new coach. Maryland coach on the hot seat. And then Purdue's got a coach going into year 2. SEC, same kind of deal. Ole Miss has a new coach. Georgia's coach is doing great. Mike Elko's doing great. Kalen DeBoer, some people say he's on a hot seat. It's hard for me to fathom that when you're coming off 11-4 season, but Bama's a different animal. Sark's not on the hot seat. Venables is off the hot seat. Clark Lee's doing great. Eli Drinkwitz is not on the hot seat. I don't think Heupel's on the hot seat. LSU has a new coach. Kentucky has a new coach. Florida has a new coach. Auburn has a new coach. Mississippi State's coach going into year 3. Beamer's on the hot seat, and Arkansas has a new coach. So there's a lot of coaches that are going either doing great or going into their first or second year. And I think that is a key ingredient for not as much turnover. NFL is a different animal, but for college football, I think I'll buy that this is a year where we have less turnover. And Detroit Hunter says, if Dabo cannot get things back together this year, he will retire and never coach again. I'll buy that. I think that's a good one. And then the next one, each of these coaches is at their final season coaching college football, move to the NFL. So I'm going to buy one, sell one, hold one. I'm going to buy Lincoln Riley, hold Ryan Day, sell Curt Cignetti. I don't think Curt Cignetti is going to the NFL. There's nothing about Curt Cignetti that makes me think he's going to go to the NFL. And if he was going to go, I think now would be the perfect time to go. You just won a championship. You literally can't have a better season ever than what you just had. Perfect 16-0 season. You're as hot as you've ever been. You're not going to get any younger next year. If he was going to go, if he had a desire to go to the NFL, I think it'd be, and there's a ton of NFL jobs open. If he was going to, including the Steelers, if he was going to go, I think this would be the time he went, and he didn't go. Lincoln Riley, I think, is most likely to go to the NFL. If he has a really good year at USC, I could see him leaving. But then there's that whole, here's the thing that I don't think I've put enough emphasis on with talking about Lincoln Riley going to the NFL, because I've always thought he could go to the NFL. But what's one of my biggest criticism of him? It's that I think he's scared of competition. Is a guy that's scared of competition going to go to the NFL? I don't think so. So I've kind of come off that train. Actually, I'm going to flip mine. I'm going to hold Lincoln Riley. I'm going to buy Ryan Day. Ryan Day's an interesting case because part of me thinks like he's perfectly content coaching college football, so we didn't hear his name a whole lot. But then he went out and hired 2 NFL coordinators the last 2 years. That could just be he sees value in that. The other thing is he's positioning himself to have a staff in place when he gets a head coaching job. That's something to think about as well. So I'm going to go in that regard there. All right, let's get to some more here from Domer from the boot. Bisa hold between duos of the Seahawk secondary players and their former coaches. Bisa hold. So I'm going to go Todd Light, Julian Love, Mike Mickens and Kobe Bryant, and Aaron Henry and Devon Witherspoon. So if we're going to say best, are you talking best from a coaching to player standpoint? Or are you talking about both being good players? If that's the case, that one's easy. It's by the Todd Light, Julian Love aspect of it. But I'm going to have to sell Todd Light and Julian Love if we're talking from a coaching and playing standpoint, the coach, the quality of the coach, and then quality of the player, because Todd Light's not coaching anymore. So I have to sell that one. And then I would buy Aaron Henry and Devon Witherspoon because Devon Witherspoon's the best player of all those guys. And then I'll hold Mike Mickens and Kobe Bryant, although Kobe's seems to be doing well in the NFL. I don't watch a whole lot of NFL, as I've told you guys before, but Mike Mickens is the best coach of this group. Devon Witherspoon's the best player of this group. And I would say Aaron Henry's right in the middle of both. Actually, he's probably, he's in the middle of both. They were all 3 really good players. Obviously, Todd Light was by far the best of the players, though. So if we're talking what they were as players, it's by Todd Light, Julian Love. If we're talking about combination of the talent of the current player and then the quality of the coach, I'd probably buy the Aaron Henry, Devon Witherspoon one. It's good submission. Also from Domer from the boot, for every game that the backup offense plays, the backup offense will score an average of 10 points per game. Oh, I'm going, boy. What did they do this season? Let me look at that here real quick. What did Notre Dame's guys do this season? So let me just make sure I'm doing this correctly. In games where the backups played, they scored. Let me get my notepad out here real quick. So they scored 7 points against Purdue. They scored 7 points against Arkansas, correct? Am I yeah, because CJ Carr was no, actually, they scored 14 against Arkansas because Notre Dame came out in the third quarter and put their starting offense on the field, but I don't think they scored. Let me go look here real quick. So let's go. Let's see here. Jadarian Price had a 16-yard touchdown run. So the backup offense scored 7 in that game. And then we look at, let's go here. Boise State, no. NC State, no. USC, no. BC, no. Navy, they scored 1 or 2 touchdowns. I think they only scored 1 touchdown against Navy as well. So I'm going to sell that. That's a lot of points in those games they got in. A lot of points. Just a reminder that if you did not get a Bisa hold submission in on the board, the only way to get a Bisa hold brought up during the show from the chat is to put a super chat. Just a reminder to people for that one. So I'm going to sell that one, Domer from the boot. It'd be nice, but I'm going to sell that one. From BK's last brain cell, Bisa hold, the national media has been overly heavy on the glazing of Notre Dame this offseason, even if it is warranted. I'm going to sell that. It's not that they haven't heaped a lot of praise on Notre Dame. I think the fact that you say it's warranted makes it not necessarily overly heavy. I think if we're talking about overly heavy, I would say that would only register for me as being overly heavy if it wasn't warranted, or maybe we didn't think Notre Dame was a legitimate contender. It's kind of like, do I think there's some nefarious reasons that some people are all hyping up Notre Dame? Sure. Am I one of the people like in the chat, it's all rat poison? No, that's nonsense. I don't think it's all rat poison. I think there's analysts that are giving their honest opinion about Notre Dame, and their honest opinion is Notre Dame is really, really going to be good next year. that doesn't mean that they won't jump on their SEC bandwagons when, the bosses tell them to dance, but but in their opinions now, they feel that way. So I don't think it's overly heavy. I think it's overly heavy when you're in a situation where it's not warranted. I just don't think it can be overly heavy if it's warranted. Unless it's just like nonstop, every show, every college football topic, it comes back to Notre Dame, and I haven't seen that, so I'll sell that. Buy sell hold from BK's last brain cell. Notre Dame would be doing themselves a disservice not giving Cam Herron, Christopher Burgess, Will Black, Kedron Young legit chances to compete for significant roles this season. So if I got to take that as a group, I'm going to sell that because I don't know that Cam Herron is in a position where he's got to be given a chance to compete beyond a normal chance. There's two ways you give a guy a chance to compete. One is just normal. You go out there and practice. He performs well. You evaluate him and move him up. The other way, and how I'm taking your question to me, is you're pushing a player. Like, hey, I really need this guy to perform, so let's make sure we give him some extra opportunities, some extra time. Let's get this guy with the ones and do those things. I don't know that I'm there yet with Cam Herron. Maybe next offseason, definitely next offseason. But so I don't know if I'm ready to give him a push just yet. Christopher Burgess, certainly, I would. Will Black, I would. Kedron Young, I would. So I would buy those three. I'm not there yet with Cam Herron. Not quite there yet with him. Another one from BK's last brain cell. Nolan James, buy so hold. Nolan James will carry the ball a minimum of 40 times this season. Ethan Long will take snaps from Luke Talich and Joey O'Brien. And if healthy, Micah Gilbert will be two or three interceptions in the receiver room. So I'm going to buy one, sell one, hold one. So I'm gonna buy, of those three, I'm going to buy Nolan James will carry the ball a minimum of 40 times this season. I absolutely buy that one. I'm going to hold on Luke Talich and Joey O'Brien losing snaps to Ethan Long. It's possible, but not both of them. And I'm going to hold that one. And I'm going to sell that one. And then I'm going to hold Micah Gilbert will be 2 or 3 interceptions in the receiver room. I could see him being third. I could see him being third and behind Greathouse and Faison. I'm not betting my mortgage on it, but I could see that. I could certainly see that. So I'll hold that one, but I'm buying the Nolan James one. Buy so hold. The tight end room will produce 8 touchdowns minimum this year as a salute to Trevor. Oh, if Trevor was watching, he'll love that one. I'm going to still sell it. I don't believe we've seen the tight ends get that many touchdowns in a bit. Maybe Michael Mayer? Let me go look here real quick. So let's go receiving. This year, the tight ends had a grand total of, what was it? So Ty Washington had one receiving touchdown. Last year with Mitchell Evans and Eli Raridon, you had Evans had 3, Raridon had 2, Cooper Flanagan had 2, so you had 7. Actually had 8 last year. You had one to Kevin Bauman as well. So you had 8 touchdowns to tight ends last year, or they had 23. You had 1 by Mitchell Evans, 4 by Holden Stace. That's 5. 1 by Eli Raridon, 1 by Cooper Flanagan, 1 by so you had actually 8 2 of the last 3 years. So see, that's why you do research, have your opinion change. I'll buy that. Since we saw it 2 of the last 3 years, including first year under Mike Denbrock. So yeah, I'll buy that. So and I've said this before, this year was a bit of an anomaly. I don't know. I didn't know that I was ready to go to 8. But definitely more than what we saw from Eli Raridon. I mean, how many times was he tackled inside the 5-yard line? A lot. All right. So let's go one more before we kind of wrap up part 1. Let's go Dangerous Dan with a buy so hold. Where would CJ Carr's lack of trust prevent him from reaching his full potential? So I have trust in the coaches, trust in the O-line, trust in the receivers, trust in himself. Look, I'm not sure how to buy so hold this one, but I'll buy that trusting in yourself is always the greatest hindrance to you achieving maximum success. Always the greatest hindrance. If you could have all the faith in your coaches and offensive line and receivers you want, but if you don't trust in yourself, then you're just never going to reach your full potential. if you don't trust in the coaches, you can still have success. If you don't have trust in the offensive line, you can still have a level of success. Same thing with receivers. You can't have success if you don't trust in yourself, because you just won't be willing to do what it takes to make the plays you need to make. If you don't trust your receivers, sometimes like, well, I'm still going to throw it anyway. It's up to him to go make a play. If you don't trust yourself, then you don't throw it. And that's why I'm going to buy that one as my biggest. That's going to be my biggest reason why. If he doesn't reach his full potential, it's a lack of trust in himself. Now, I don't think that's an issue for him, and I don't think that's any of these are really issues for CJ right now. The one that I would say more specifically to Notre Dame, getting off of just the theoretical, which is my first answer, getting to the more practical, I think if there were an issue for CJ this season, I think it would boil more down to the offensive line. Not trusting your offensive line can have a greater hindrance on a quarterback than not trusting your coaches or not trusting the receivers. So that would be my next answer on that one, Dan. So that's going to do it for part one of today's Buy, Sell, Hold. Before we get to part two, I just ask you guys a little bit of a favor. Do me a favor. See that little thumbs up button like right below at the bottom? Go ahead and hit that for us. It helps us. It helps the algorithm. We did have a Buy, Sell, Hold chat or question that I'm not going to bring up that was talking about, is it helpful for Irish Breakdown if you hit the hype button? And my understanding is it does. It helps kind of promote us. Always sharing the podcast helps promote us, but it's really about listening and just making sure that you're a regular listener to the show and hitting the like and engaging, commenting in the comment section. Things along those lines are things that really help the algorithm when it comes to the YouTube channel. When it comes to the podcast side, obviously listening every day is the big thing. Listening to all the different segments helps us a ton. Leaving a comment and a 5-star review and a comment is also something that really helps us a lot. So if you like this show and you're a fan of the show, it would really help us a lot if you go to the podcast, whatever podcast app you listen to shows on, and leave a 5-star review with us and tell other people why they should watch our show. Those are things that you can do to really help Irish Breakdown that really don't cost you any money. They just cost you your time. Your time is very valuable, and we appreciate that. But if people ask me all the time, what are things we can do to help support Irish Breakdown? Well, those are ways you can do it. But, of course, the best way is always to make sure that you're signing up for our premium message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Let's get into part two of today's Buy, Sell, Hold show. And we're going to kick things off with Iden Banami. Iden asks, Buy, Sell, Hold. Jeremiah Love will have a better individual career in the NFL than Ricky Watters. So I have no idea whether or not he will, Iden. I'm not a prognosticator, but I will answer your question this way. I will buy the possibility that Jeremiah Love could have a longer and a better career than Ricky Watters in the NFL. It's certainly possible. Jeremiah Love is a very gifted player, very talented player, very versatile player, which is what made Ricky so successful. Ricky played 10 years in the NFL, which, is not an easy thing to do nowadays as a running back, unless you're, one of the better ones. He rushed for 10,643 yards, also caught 467 passes for 4,248 yards, and in his career had a grand total of 14,891 yards from scrimmage, and he had a grand total of 91 touchdowns. Ricky also in the playoffs rushed for over 600 yards in the playoffs, had over 450 yards in 11 career playoff games. So in 11 career playoff games, Ricky had 1,117 yards and 12 touchdowns. That's excellent success in the postseason. Again, 11 games, and he averaged, rushed for, had over 1,000 yards of total yards, and then 12 touchdowns in only 11 games. That's really impressive. And then in 1993, the year before they won the Super Bowl, he had 6 touchdowns in 2 playoff games. He had 6 rushing touchdowns in two playoff games in 1993 for the 49ers. So that season, the Niners played the Giants, and they played the Dallas Cowboys in the playoffs, and Ricky rushed for 6 total touchdowns in those 2 games. So he had 5 in the game against the Giants, a game they won 55-3 in 1993 playoff game. He had 5 rushing touchdowns in that game. That's a pretty good day's work. It's a pretty good day's work. Let's see what his rushing numbers were. He rushed for 118 yards that game, had 5 catches for 46 yards. in that game, and then they played. He had a rushing touchdown against the Cowboys in the NFC Championship game. They lost that next year. So Ricky was a very productive player in the NFL. If Jeremiah Love exceeds that, then what a phenomenal career. Is he capable of it? Yes. Am I going to predict it? No, I'm not going to predict it. That's just, there's so many things that can happen, but he has the talent to do so. Let's see what team he goes to, and let's see if he can stay healthy. But man, that would be one heck of a career. There's no doubt about it. Next one is from Idem Banami. It says Brendan Sorsby is overrated and not nearly even close to worth that much money. I'm old enough to remember him being the laughing stock at IU. Well, first of all, I don't really care what he did at Indiana. That's irrelevant. I think that's a completely unfair thing to say. Imagine if somebody was talking about Notre Dame and you were debating the greatness of Brady Quinn, and somebody said to you, man, Brady Quinn was super overrated. Well, hold on a second. What are you talking about? Brady Quinn was super? Yeah, he's super overrated, dude. He was not a good quarterback. What are you talking about? Like, in 2 years under Charlie Weiss, he passed for over 7,000 yards, finished with over 10,000 in his career, had 69 touchdown passes in 2 years, and led Notre Dame to 18 or 19 wins in 2 years, back-to-back, New Year's Six bowl games. What are you talking about? Brady Quinn's overrated? Well, I remember watching him when he played for Ty Willingham. Like, what would your response to that be? You'd be like, dude, that's an unfair way to evaluate. Number one, he was younger. Number one. Number two, he played for a bad coach. Is that not the same thing that we would use to criticize Brendan Sorsby for the first 2 years? Also, I don't care what Indiana fans thought. He was a starting quarterback on a bad football team. He had 15 passing touchdowns, 4 rushing touchdowns, and 5 interceptions in 10 games on a bad football team. So I don't remember anything about him being a laughingstock. But even if he was starting quarterback on a bad football team. So I strongly disagree with that notion. So I'm selling that part of it. I will buy, however, he's not worth that kind of money. That I absolutely buy. But it's not because he's overrated. I think Brendan Sorsby is a good quarterback. I think he's a good football player. And when you look at the production he had last year, and you talk about 2,800 passing yards in 12 games, 580 rushing yards. He has a total of 3,380 total yards, and he had 36 total touchdowns in 12 games on a not very good team. And had some good moments against some good teams. Had a very good game against Kansas. Played his tail off at least as a runner and playmaker against Nebraska. Didn't throw a whole lot, but had some balls dropped that game. He played pretty well against TCU. But he's staying in the same league. So you've seen him perform against that league. So I don't know why there'd be any concern about whether or not he can perform against that league. My pushback would be, I don't think he's worth the money. I don't think anybody's worth that kind of money, really. Especially, I just don't think anybody's worth it. But I don't think that makes him overrated. I think those two things are very different. I think he's properly rated. I don't know many people that have him as a top 5 to 8 quarterback. There's some that have him, in that area, but I don't think most do. So I don't know that I'd call him overrated, to be honest with you. I think he's properly rated for the most part. He's not an elite quarterback. He's a good college quarterback. But I think holding against him what he did in Indiana is a very unfair thing to say. I mean, you just can't pretend like what you saw, this past season wasn't a thing. And he was a pretty good player the year before for Cincinnati as well. I mean, they weren't a very good team, but he had 23 total touchdowns and had over 2,800 career yards and threw 7 picks. So I think he's a good football player. He's one of 10, 15 best quarterbacks in the country, in my opinion. I didn't have him in the top 10. I think Trev did, barely. I had him more in the top 15 range. So if somebody has him number 7 or 8, I'm not like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. If you have him in the top 5, you have him overrated. I don't know many people that have done that. So I think, one of the responses I'm saying about, his numbers in November, again, that's a team related thing. That's like people who would say, well, John Elway wasn't a great quarterback because look what he did in the Super Bowls. Well, yeah, look what he did in the Super Bowls. He got some really bad football teams into the Super Bowl. I just think sometimes we put way too much on a quarterback. Oh, they didn't win this game because of this. They didn't win that game because of that. and then we're going to act like the quarterback's the primary reason for it. Against TCU, for example, he throws for 282 yards, has 3 touchdowns, no picks, rushes for 59 more yards. The defense gave up 45 points. Is that on Brendan Sorsby? I don't think so. So I just think we put too much of that stuff on quarterbacks. So it's like we invent reasons to critique the quarterback, and then we'll say, oh well, yeah, he played on a bad team, but there's no but. He played on a bad team. But again, am I paying him $5 million a year? Heck no. But I don't think anybody's really worth that in college football. I just don't. So, and Raymond Hartley hits it. He's better than Baron Morton, and that's the whole point. That he's better than Baron Morton. He'll be on a much better team than he was last year. I don't know that they'll be 12-0 or 11-1 like they were last year, but he's a good, solid college quarterback. If you have him beyond that, then you overrate him. But I don't know of anybody I haven't seen anybody that has him ranked that high. Bicep hold for my Dan Benami. Seeing Mox pass away, that's James Vanderbeek, this past week, and seeing all the videos about his life and parenting really makes us older 80s baby miss the past and how life was back then in much simpler times and put in life into perspective. But not sure I could go back because our Indy football team now is 100 times better and annual national title contenders. Well, first of all, if you feel that life overall was better in the past at a period of time, then I would much rather live in that time, no matter what it might mean for a football program. I mean, if you're a parent, I would much rather live in an era where things are better. I'm not arguing if they aren't. Every generation, every era has great parts about it, and every generation has bad parts about it. So I'm not looking to debate that. What I will say, however, is if you think there was a time that was better for your kids, then that should always make it an easy decision to go back to, even if it doesn't mean your football team is not as good. Having said that, I mean, if you're an 80s baby, Notre Dame won a national title in the 80s, and then, had some great stretches in the 90s, early 90s as well. So I don't know that that'd be a terrible time to go back to. I would love it if you look at it from my standpoint, I was born in 78. The 80s were great for me as a sports fan. Obviously there's some things that we have now that I'm glad we have, the internet. I'm glad we have, but then also I'm sometimes wish we didn't have the internet, you know what I mean? And, sometimes I miss not being, having your phone on all the time. I miss some of the things not the innocence, because it wasn't an innocent time, but like the distractions. We didn't have as many distractions back then as we do now. But there were also negatives during that time. But here's the thing. I was a Broncos fan, a Celtics fan, a Cincinnati Reds fan, and a Notre Dame football fan, and a Michigan basketball fan as a kid. Everybody but the Reds either played for or won a title in the 80s, and the Reds won one in 90. And so like the Broncos made it to 3 Super Bowls, didn't win any, but did win a couple in the 90s. Celtics won. I don't remember the first Celtics title that I was born. I don't remember the 81 title, but I definitely remember 84 and 86. I obviously remember Notre Dame's title in 88. I remember the Michigan championship in 88, 89 with Glenn Rice and Leigh Vault, Terry Mills, and all those guys. Sean Higgins, Ramil Robinson. I remember, obviously, the Reds championship in 1990. And then, obviously, as a kid, I remember watching Pete Rose at the end of his career. And I remember Tony Perez. And my first favorite player growing up, you always have different eras of favorite players. But my first ever favorite player that I remember in baseball, obviously, John Elway was my football guy. Larry Bird was my baseball guy. But my first favorite baseball player growing up was not Pete Rose or Johnny Bench or Tony Perez. It was Davey Concepcion. My first year at T-ball, my number was 13 because I was a big Davey Concepcion fan. And so, that was a pretty good era for me as a sports fan. I wouldn't mind an era where Notre Dame wins a title, the Reds win a World Series, the Celtics win multiple titles, and I actually cared about NBA. So those are absolute great times. Like I remember when as a kid, I remember sitting there watching, with my dad. My dad was a big Celtics fan. I remember watching those games against the Rockets. I remember that in 86, especially when they beat the Rockets. I think I was 8. But yeah, that was a big one. 84 beating the Lakers. I remember that one. Obviously remember all the Broncos Super Bowls and Yeah, I didn't really like 88 was the first year that I was really locked into Notre Dame football. Prior to 88, and same thing with college basketball, I was more of a pro sports guy. And it wasn't until like that Notre Dame season in 88 that I kind of fell in love with college football. So I those were good times. Those were good times. All right. Got some more from let's see here. There we go. Another from Mike Benami. Every level on Bison Hold, every level on defense will set or break some sort of record this season, individual or group wise. I'm gonna sell that because it's gonna be incredibly hard for any linebackers to break records. Defensive line wise, I could see that. Secondary as a group, I could see them having the most interceptions ever. It's going to be hard to I think it was Mike Townsend has the all-time interceptions record of 10, I believe. But season interception record, I could see that happening. Sack record, I could definitely see that happening. But linebacker play is just so less productive now than it was 20, 30 years ago. I mean, if you look at some of the all-time leaders in tackles over the year, it's so much different than it is now. And I'm going to try to bring this up and in a way that doesn't take it down. But actually, it's not even going to let me do that. It's going to pop it up on the screen. But like the numbers that got, I mean, Manti put up crazy numbers as from a tackle standpoint. He didn't even come close to setting the record at Notre Dame. So I don't see that as being something that we're going to see a record being broken at that position. Just don't see it. But first and third level certainly can. Airball VW with a buy so hold. Having a contract with Under Armour rather than Nike results in at least one recruit per cycle that does not consider Notre Dame. I have been covering recruiting a long time. We don't do as much of it now as we used to. I've literally never, ever, in all my time doing this, had a player or a parent talk to me about whether they were or were not interested in Notre Dame based on who Notre Dame was signed with, Nike or Under Armour, whoever else. I've literally never heard it. I think that's something that fans think a lot more about than recruits. Basketball, sure, happens all the time in basketball. But it's just not something that I've ever heard be an issue with a football player. And we've been asked this before. Every summer or every offseason we get asked this by somebody. And perhaps it's happened, but literally cannot think of one. And no one's ever been able to point to one where a guy who otherwise would have really liked Notre Dame didn't go to Notre Dame because they were with Under Armour or with Adidas or with Champion or whoever else. Never heard of that before. I can't even tell you of any team that's done that. I've seen, kids like the Jumpman logo and fans get freaked out because how much kid likes the Jumpman logo when he goes to Michigan and then the kid signs with Notre Dame. Just have never heard it being an issue in college football. Not once. So maybe somebody could point that out to me, but I've just never heard it being an issue. We have from Eddie 82. By a whole, besides Leonard Moore, Notre Dame will have one or more first or second team All-Americans or freshman All-Americans in the backfield, defensive backfield in 2026. I'll buy that. Yeah, I'll definitely buy that. I mean, not even getting into the freshman All-American aspect of it, because I actually think that's less likely. I absolutely think either Tay Johnson or Adon Schuler has a chance to be an All-American this year. No question about it. Absolutely buy that. Absolutely buy that. Buy so hold. Besides Leonard Moore, at least 3 players from the Notre Dame secondary will be selected in the 2027 NFL Draft. 27 NFL Draft. I will buy that. Yeah. Because you'll have Leonard Moore and you'll have DJ McKinney are definitely, I would imagine both are going to be on the NFL. Christian Gray will definitely be on the NFL because he's out of eligibility after this season. And then there's the possibility of either Tay or Adon going. Yeah, I absolutely buy that. I'll actually be surprised if that's not the case, to be honest with you. Very surprised. All right. More from Eddie 82. Buy so hold. Speaking of All-Americans and NFL draft players in the secondary, Eddie 82 says, buy so hold. Tay Johnson will lead the team in interceptions in 2026. I could certainly see that. I'll actually buy that. Depending on, obviously, a lot's going to depend on how Chris Ash uses the secondary, but if it's anything like what we saw the second half of last year, I absolutely believe that. I mean, look, Tay Johnson played like 6 or 7 snaps, maybe 9 snaps in the opener, and then missed the last 2 games. So he really only played 9 games last season. He had 4 interceptions. So, I mean, that's a pretty good rate. 2 against BC, 1 against Pitt, 1 against Boise State. And then just the way that they play him, there's going to be times when a ball sails over somebody else and he's just there to pick it off. And that was several of his interceptions this year. Leonard Moore led the team last year, but consider this. Leonard Moore was not leading the team in interceptions when Tay went out. Now, Leonard only played 10 games as well. But when Tay got hurt, Leonard Moore was second on the team in interceptions. Tay was number 1. And then Leonard passed him in the last couple of games. He had a pick against obviously Stanford at the end of the game. They had a pick against Syracuse that he returned for a touchdown. Is not at the end of the game. He had the pick against Stanford at the end of the first half that set them up for score. So, yeah, I will buy that. He also says buy sold someone other than Jordan Faison will lead the Irish in receptions and receiving yards in 2026. I will sell receptions and I will buy receiving yards. I think somebody will have more receiving yards than Jordan this year. I don't know that I'll buy in receptions. I just think the way that Notre Dame plays, there's going to be a lot of those stop routes, hitch routes, things like that. RPO throws are going to go to Jordan. That the position is geared towards a lot of production. So I'm gonna go with him as in receptions. Somebody else will have more receiving yards. By so old, Keon Keeley will be second on the team in sacks in 26 and will lead the team in sacks in 2027. I'm gonna sell that he'll be second on the team in sacks in 2026. And I'm gonna sell 27 as well. It's possible 27. I think Bryce Young is on the verge of a breakout. And I think Bryce will be number 2, or even a linebacker will be number 2 in sacks in 2026. So I'm going to sell that. Look, I'm excited about Keon, very excited about Keon, but I feel like we're doing to Keon right now what a lot of us did to Bryce last offseason and putting all this hype that Bryce is just going to come in and be this monster. Yes, Keon showed growth last year, but there's a long way to go between where he was at the end of 25 and where he needs to be to kind of have that kind of production. Having said that, I won't be surprised if he does that. He's certainly capable of doing that. But if I had to predict, I'd say 3rd in 2026 and 2nd in 2027 would be my prediction. But I won't be surprised if I'm wrong on that because Keon's a very talented player. I need to see him put it all together first. Also from Eddie82, Eddie had a lot of good ones. The Irish will return at least 1 kickoff or punt return, not counting block punts, for a touchdown in 26. Buy that. They've done that in each of the last 3. Marty Biagi's produced 4 kick returns for touchdowns, right? Because he had Jadarian Price had the one against USC in 23. I believe that was the only one in 2023. Yes, he had the one against USC in 23, and in 24, Jaden Harrison had one against Georgia, and then this past year, obviously, Jadarian had 2, one against Purdue, one against USC. So continuing that theme, I'll be surprised if they don't have 1. So, yes, I'll buy that. Then also from Eddie82, buy so hold, Notre Dame will be top 5 in red zone defense determined by touchdown percentage in 2026. Top 5? Let me see here. Give me a second here real quick, and let me pull up last year's data because they were good in red zone touchdown, but I don't remember them being great by any stretch. Yeah, they were 47th last year in red zone touchdown percentage. Some of that was based on the the younger guys giving up red zone touchdowns, to be honest with you. But even in 2024, when they were great in the red zone overall, they were 18th overall in red zone in 2000 on defensive red zone in 2024. They were still 41st in red zone touchdowns. That's a huge jump. I'd love to see it, but they are way off. They need to prove a lot to get to that point in time. So I'm going to sell that. I'm going to sell that quite a bit. Got a buy so hold from Dirtbag Jake 13. He says, knowing the potential of the 26 team, this is the season Freeman and Denbrock forced the hand of Rudolph on the starting offensive line. Buy, sell, or hold. I'm going to sell that. because we all think this team has tremendous potential, as does the Notre Dame coaching staff. But as I've said before, and Sean was even talking about this the other day when he and I did a show together, I was talking before 2024 about how the Notre Dame coaching staff felt the 24 team had a chance to do it all. And I think the 25 team had a chance. So if they weren't going to force the issue in the preseason of those seasons, what would make 26 any different? I would love for that to be the case, but there's no evidence they're going to do that. And I think 26, in our opinion, this is the year, but that's our current bias of our presence, our bias of it being the present of the now. They felt that way in 25 and they felt that way in 24, and they still didn't force his hand to start the season. Now they forced his hand during 24. I was told by a couple people that when Billy Schrouth came back from injury, that Rudolph was just going to put him in place of Rocco. And that I was told that got overruled, whether it was by Denbrock or Freeman or whoever, and they kept Rocco in the lineup and took out Sam Pendleton. How true is that? I'm pretty confident. My sources don't make things up; they're usually pretty spot on, so I believe it to be true. But I mean, they haven't done that yet. I don't know why they do that now. By so hold, Elijah Burst will be a key contributor this season. I'll buy that he's got a chance to. I mean, this is so early. We're talking it's February 16th. You know, it's still early before we start locking down, oh, this is going to be happen. That's going to be. I mean, I want to see how spring ball goes. But I'll say this. Going into the spring, I absolutely have my eyes on Elijah Burris as a player that if he can have a good spring, could force himself into the rotation. No question about it. Then also buy, so hold. Tion Gray is going to be a Navy nightmare. Also, same thing. I'll buy that as a possibility. Absolutely. I'll buy this as a possibility. And I think we saw that they wanted to have that kind of big nose guy this year against Navy when they put Sean Sevillano in the game. And I think Tion's an athletic player. It's going to really come down to how good is he at keeping guys off of his legs. That's going to be the key. But yes, I think there's an absolute chance that he's going to be a nightmare against Navy. No question. I buy that. Let's get to some. Here's one from Grubbin Up Heisman. Buy so hold 13 personnel, Preston Frizzell being moved outside at times. You can have it line up more like 12 or have him in the backfield for a more standard 13 look. For 2026, I'm going to sell that. I don't think Preston Frizzell is going to play meaningful snaps in 2026. Down the road, that's certainly possible. Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things you like about Preston Frizzell is that he's going to be a guy that can line up all over. I mean, there's situations where you could go 13 personnel and almost go like 3-4 wide when you talk about having him in the game. I mean, let's say they went 13 personnel, one receiver, one back, 3 tight ends on 1st and 10, or 2nd and 5. And they go 13 personnel. Team puts their base defense out. You could go Ian Premer in the boundary. You could then go James Flanagan attached. You could go Preston Frizzell in the slot or Preston Frizzell outside, put Jordan Faison or Jaden Greathouse in the slot. And all of a sudden, you've got some matchup problems for the defense. It's not something you're going to do 50 snaps a game, but in certain looks where a team's going to go, they're going to make – because, like, for example, last year when teams go 12 personnel, Notre Dame would put an extra linebacker on the field. Well, if you have guys like Ian Premer and Preston Frizzell, once they've been in the weight room for a couple of years – if you're going to do that, okay, I can do some things now pass game-wise where I'm going to get some advantages over you by spreading out and lining up in certain ways and getting some ISO situations with my tight end. So I could certainly see that down the road, but it's not something that I expect to see in 2026. Beezer 12 Washing Beard, still one of my favorite names. He says, Bice a hold, North Dakota State will win the Mountain West Conference within 5 years. Let me see what's left in the Mountain West Conference. Let's see here. Mountain West Conference in 2026 and for football. So let's go here. All right, because obviously there's some teams leaving for the Pac-12. There's a lot of stuff going on. So let me see what the Mountain West looks like in 2026. All right, because let me see. Give me a second. All right, so what do we have? We have Air Force, Hawaii, Nevada, New Mexico, UNLV, San Jose State, Northern Illinois, North Dakota State, UTEP, and Wyoming. That's right. Boise's leaving for the Pac-12. with that in that league, absolutely, I could see them winning it in 5 years. Absolutely, I'll buy that for sure. Buy so hold regionality will one day come back to college football. Yeah, I buy that. I mean, it's a lot of things are cyclical, not everything, but a lot of things are cyclical. There will come a time when something that happens in college football brings us back to where it's silly to have the divisions away, the things the way they are now. Now, here's the thing we may not like. Regionality may turn out to be where like the SEC and Big Ten eat everybody else up, and they have some really creative presidents, conference commissioners that say, okay, we're going to basically create two big super leagues, but within those super leagues, we're going to have this division that's going to be the old Southwest Conference teams. This division is going to be the old SEC teams. This division is going to be the old ACC teams. This division is going to be the old Big East. This division is going to be the Big Eight, whatever. I could certainly see that down the road, whether it's as part of a mega conference or just that there's some sort of change that comes from Congress that basically says, hey, look, we're going to pool all the TV revenue together like they do for the NFL. If you do that, then I think very quickly teams go back to their original leagues to some degree. Even if original doesn't mean what they were in 1970, because they always change. I mean, Georgia Tech used to be in the SEC and South Carolina was an independent. But more so like original, I mean, not even original might be the wrong word, but what it was in like 2000 or something like that. I could certainly see that. Buy so hold these dead conferences, the Southwest Conference, the Big East, and the WAC. All right, I'm gonna buy the Southwest Conference. I wish that we could go back to the Southwest Conference being a thing. Obviously that would have been what? Texas. It was Texas, Texas Tech, Baylor, TCU, SMU, Rice, Arkansas. There were two more. So Texas, Texas Tech, TCU, Baylor, Houston, SMU, Arkansas. I'm missing a team from the Southwest Conference. Let me see here. Southwest Conference. See, 1986 college football standings. Let me see here. I'm missing one team. Who am I? Did I say Rice? Let's see here. It's no. Let's see here. I'm Texas Tech. Find the rankings. Good Lord, where's the standings? Okay, this is normally a lot easier to find. So I'm going to go 1986 college football standings conference, college football season. Let's try this college football season. All right, so Southwest Conference in 1986 was Texas A&M. Texas A&M, that's who I was forgetting. Texas A&M, Arkansas, Baylor, Texas Tech, SMU, Texas, Rice, TCU, and Houston. So it's those 9 teams. And then the SEC was 10 teams. It was the traditional teams. They didn't have South Carolina in it. They didn't have Missouri. They didn't have Arkansas. Teams like that. It was just LSU, Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Mississippi State, Kentucky, Florida, Vandy. The Big Ten had 10 teams. The Big Eight had 8 teams: Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Colorado, Nebraska, Iowa State, Missouri, Kansas State, Kansas. The ACC had 8 teams. It was Clemson, NC State, North Carolina, Georgia Tech, Maryland, Wake Forest, Duke, and Virginia. And then you had the WAC. And I was never a huge fan of the WAC. It was San Diego State, BYU, Air Force, Hawaii, Colorado State, Wyoming, New Mexico, UTEP, and Utah. The Big East was an interesting one, and I'd probably sell the Big East because I feel like the Big East in football killed the Big East in basketball. And I thought in basketball, the Big East was a great league. It was like had a very short lifespan if you think about it compared to other conferences. But if they would have just stuck to, hey, we're going to be a basketball conference primarily, that was a great league. But then they started adding all these football teams to it, and it blew up, and obviously went away. The Big East is back now, but it's a basketball only conference now. It's what it should have always been. But you can do that now in the Big East because the Big East in basketball now doesn't really have any. Do they have any Division I football teams? Hold on a second. Let me go look. Now, some of them have football, but they don't have Division I football. So you've got UConn. So UConn does, but they're an independent. Villanova does not have football. I mean, excuse me, St. John's doesn't have football. Villanova has football, but it's FCS. Seton Hall doesn't have football. I think Creighton has football, but I think they're FCS. Xavier doesn't have football. DePaul doesn't have football. Georgetown has football, but they're FCS. Marquette doesn't have football. Butler has football, but it's FCS. And then Providence doesn't have football. So UConn's the only one that has a Division I football team anymore, and they're an independent. So I'll sell the Big East because I feel like the Big East football conference, while it should be a cool conference if it came back, the way it was done killed the basketball conference, and that kind of sucks. Because, man, it was a great conference. I mean, I still – because in the 80s, I was a Michigan basketball fan, but I didn't really become like a big Michigan basketball fan until they won the title, and then the Fab Five came along. As a kid, I was more so just I liked the tournament. I just liked the teams. I still remember Oklahoma having some great teams, Arkansas having some great teams. A little bit later, but like Georgia Tech and had the Killer Bees was just a really talented backcourt. That was actually in the 80s. It was Dennis Scott, Kenny Anderson. I think it was Brian Oliver was the third one. I remember I think it was Stacey Day. Was that his name, Stacey Day? But Billy Owens at Syracuse, Derek Coleman. I still remember some of those great Syracuse teams. But I was a big fan of just college basketball, the tournament. And the Big East had such great games. I mean, I remember as a kid when they first started airing those games on networks, you could watch Syracuse and Georgetown. But even when you couldn't watch them, they were big. I mean, they were huge. You couldn't wait to get to the paper the next day to see how it went. Totally remember this. And yeah, Bobby Cremins was the head coach when that team was really good. It was Dennis Scott and then Kenny Anderson. Kenny Anderson was so good in college. Michael Parks, Pearl Washington. Yes, he was a tremendous player. Pearl was a little bit before my time of really remembering. My favorite Syracuse point guard growing up was Adrian Autry, who's the head coach now. But I remember that Derek Coleman, Billy Owens team. I remember the year Billy Owens team got knocked out of the tournament by Richmond. Still remember that. But yeah, the Big East back then was tremendous. So good back then. Good one. Nice little trip down memory lane there, Beezer. Beezer also says the player that improves the most coming out of spring ball will be Jaden Greathouse. I'm going to sell that because I think there's a lot of other players that have a lot more room to improve. I think Greathouse is just more about getting him healthy and him developing a connection with CJ Carr. I think that he was a pretty good player in 2024. And when they actually threw him the ball last year, he was a pretty good player. He had some pretty clutch catches last year on his limited opportunities. And when you look at if Greathouse gets better and becomes the player we think he's capable of, and Quincy Porter just becomes a solid rotation player, Quincy Porter will have made a bigger improvement than Jaden Greathouse will have made just because of where he is right now. So I'm going to sell that. Buy, so hold. Alabama and LSU miss the playoffs next year. I'm going to sell. I think one of them will make it. I think there's a better chance they both miss than they both make it, though. I will give you that. But I'm going to sell. I think at least one of them makes it. And buy, so hold these home and home matchups. Tennessee for Notre Dame. Tennessee, Penn State, and UCLA. So I would buy Tennessee. I've always said I would love to play Tennessee. I'll hold UCLA because I wouldn't mind a little home and home with UCLA. The gold helmets, their version of gold, blue and gold compared to Notre Dame's. Playing a game in the Rose Bowl would be pretty cool. So I'll hold that, and I'll sell Penn State. I have zero desire to play Penn State. So I don't. From Domer Grizz. I remember typing this one. This is a rough one. So Domer Grizz says, buy, so hold. If you had to relive one of these days over and over, buy one, sell one, and hold one of these days. September 7th, 2024, Northern Illinois game. That's a tough one. You've got November 15th, 2014, Northwestern. That's a game they lost to a bad Northwestern team in overtime. And then you've got October 15th, 2005, USC. So this is a tough one, and from the standpoint of reliving three losses. But as far as picking which one I would take, it's a pretty easy answer for me. So I would buy the USC game big time. I'd buy that October 15th, 2005. Here's the biggest reason why is it's not just about Notre Dame. I mean, they're all losses, right? That was the best game of all. I've had to keep watching that game. As heartbreaking as it was, that was still a great game. I was coaching at the time. We had a game that day, and we played Chowan University. We won. I'm looking to score up now. I knew it was a blowout. We won 47-26, and we had some pretty big plays in the pass game that day. And so, yes, I would absolutely. I've shared the stories of like after the game, I'm like quickly shaking hands with the other team and with parents, and I'm sprinting to the locker room to get in. I had the guy that did our media. So when I was at senior, this is the life of a D3 coach. I'm the receivers coach, assistant head coach, recruiting coordinator. I'm the video coordinator, and I had one other title I can't remember. But I had guys that worked under me in the video crew, and they got, we have the big old screen in our coach's office where we'd watch film with players. And then back then, I mean, you could probably still do this. I don't know how many people even use VCRs, but you could hook the cable, the local cable up to the VCR, and you could get ABC, NBC channels like that. So since Notre Dame was on NBC, I said, hey, go set this up. When I come back in after the game, I want this to be ready to go. And so I remember coming in, and one of the first things that I remember seeing in that game as I walked in to start watching it was Tom Zibikowski's punt return for a touchdown. So, I mean, if I had to relive that day again, it's going to be heartbreaking, but it's still way better than the other two. So I would buy that one. I would probably, I'd probably hold Northern Illinois, because even though that was a bad day of football, it was a beautiful day of having to relive. And then the Northwestern game was just miserable all around. It was a cold, ugly day. I would not want to have to live that weather every day. So I'll sell that one. So, but here's the thing. Somebody said buy NIU. It didn't end up mattering. That doesn't matter. This is basically looking at the movie Groundhog Day. It doesn't matter that it ended up mattering, because the whole premise of this is, like Groundhog Day, the movie, you're reliving this day over and over and over. There is no tomorrow. There is no the next 13 wins. That's the day that you have to relive over and over and over. The only disadvantage to 2005 is that I hadn't met my wife yet. So at least in the other two, I'd have my wife. But as far as all the other things, like football-wise, I was still coaching, and we won a game that day, and my receivers had a lot of big plays. So that at least makes that day tolerable from a football standpoint. All right, let's get to this next one from Floating Irish. Buy so hold. A freshman on defense has 3 sacks this season. Oh, man, I want to hope by that. I'm going to hope by that one. I'm hope buying that one of Rodney Dunham, Ebenezer Utade, Elijah Golden has 3 sacks this year. I'll hope by one of those, yeah. Buy so hold from Floating Irish. CJ Carr has 3 rushing touchdowns. I'll buy that. I mean, he had 3 last year, and I think he'll even be better in certain like scrambling and those type of things this year. So last year, his 3 touchdowns were all designed runs. This year, I could see them all being, maybe 2 or 3 of those, but also being a situation where like he scrambles and runs for a 12-yard touchdown or something like that. So yeah, I'll buy that. And then buy so hold LSU. What's up with all these LSU questions from y'all today? Buy so hold LSU makes the SEC. Buy so hold. So actually, what I'll do here is I'll buy one, sell one, hold one, because I think that's what he wants to do. LSU makes the SEC championship game. IU repeats as Big Ten champs. CJ Carr breaks the single season passing record. So I'm going to buy that one. I'm going to buy CJ Carr breaking the single season passing record. If he would have kept on what did he have this year? 24 of them, correct? So let me see here. CJ Carr. Let's go here. CJ had 24. So he averaged 2 a game. If Notre Dame plays for a championship this year and he has 2 a game, that gets him to at least 30 if he only averages 2. So in 7 of the 15, and I'm even granting that they only play 15 games. I'm even granting that they get a bye. It's even easier if they don't get a bye. But if let's say they play 15 games, he only averages 2 a game, that gets him to 30. That would mean in the other 15 games, he needs to have 7 games of 3. in or of 3 or more to tie the record and then 8 to break it, that's doable. That's very doable. I'm gonna hold that LSU makes the SEC championship game. I think they're capable of it because of a lot of different factors, but mainly their roster is talented and their schedule is very favorable compared to some other top contenders. And I'll sell that Indiana repeats as Big Ten champs. They're going to still be very good again this year, and I think they're still a playoff caliber team again this year. There's no doubt about it. But Big Ten is pretty loaded, and honestly, the best team in the Big Ten doesn't always win the championship, as we've seen in recent years with Ohio State. All right. And yes, Brady Quinn does have the record, and I believe that I believe it was 2006 that Brady set the record. It was not 05, but I think in 05 he had only 32. And yes, I'm correct. So in 06 he set the record 37. He had 32 in 05. He had 37 in 13 games. I could see CJ breaking that record this year. Because part of us will have more games. Jimmy only passed for 28 in 09, and then Ian Book had 34 in 2019. So Brady still holds that record. We have a bias hold from S. Stewart. A special teams play will result in a momentum shift in one of Notre Dame's games this season. I'll buy that, certainly. Yeah, I'll buy that. Hold on a second. So let's go back here. He said, so Floating Irish said, I actually meant passing yards in a season. So passing yards in a season, I would say I'll sell that. Because even if Notre Dame plays 15 games, Brady passed for 3,919 yards in 2005. And if Notre Dame plays 15 games, that's averaging 261.3 yards per game. That's doable, but I just kind of feel like Notre Dame's going to have a lot of blowouts this year where CJ's not – I mean, CJ could throw for 250 yards and not attempt to pass in the second half. I mean, that's doable. He could throw for 200 yards in the first half and only have 50 yards in this third quarter, and then the game's – his day is over. That's going to be the problem, is because they're going to be so dominant. And I still don't think Notre Dame's going to become like this chuck it all over the field team like I think some people think they're going to be. I don't know that they're going to do that. Is it possible that he does that? Absolutely. Am I going to predict that he's going to do that? No, I'm not, because I think this team is going to be a little bit more balanced than they were in 05 and a little bit more balanced than I think people think. So thank you for clarifying that. I was still kind of on the touchdowns thing from up here. So I was, for some reason, was still stuck on touchdowns. S. Stewart, back to your bias hold. A special teams play will result in a momentum shift in one of Notre Dame's games this season. I'll buy that. Yeah, I'll buy that. I think that, I mean, it could be a game they end up blowing out, but you could see something where it could also be a negative. There could be a play where, it's a struggle early, but I mean, we saw that with Purdue this year. I mean, Purdue scores late in the first half, and man, that game's a battle, and you're like, why is this game a battle? It's frustrating. You're like, you're letting Purdue stay in this game. There's no reason to let Purdue stay in this game. You should be killing this team. They're not very good. You threw a touchdown pass in the first play of the game. Then your defense lets them go right down the field. You go score a touchdown. They go down and kick a field goal. It's 28-10. Jadarian just runs it in. It's late in the second half. Like, this game should be over. And then you let them go get a field goal. And then CJ gets sacked. Anthony Knapp gives up the sack. Then they kick a field goal to make it 28-16. And you're just like, what the flipping heck is going on right now? Like, why are they allowing this team to be in the game? And then what happens? Next kick, Jadarian Price, boom, takes it back to the house. Game over. Like, even in a blowout game, that was a momentum change. Forget the fact that you have the fourth quarter kick return against USC, where USC takes a lead in the fourth quarter and then Jadarian takes it right back. I'm not even counting that one. That's an obvious one. I would even argue the Purdue one is a momentum-changing play. It could be a bad one, too. I remember Pitt in 2018. Notre Dame is about to force Pitt out on a 3-and-out. And I think Notre Dame, let me pull this up. I think Notre Dame had just taken a lead. Let me see. Pitt, Notre Dame box score 2018. So Notre Dame, I think, see here. Notre Dame had punted on their first drive. Pitt gets the ball. Were they 3? Yes. It was, no, see, it was, no, it was, so they had a, let's see here. Forgot Kenny Pickett was on that team. So they had got a first down on the first 2 plays. Then they had a 1-yard run, a 5-yard run, and an incompletion. So it's 4th and 4. And Notre Dame's about to force a punt from Pitt. And Nico Fertitta jumps off sides on the punt. And Pitt gets the ball back, and they go on a long scoring drive. 17-play, 88-yard drive. Took over 9 minutes off the clock. And Notre Dame struggled to recover from that. Really struggled to recover from that. And didn't really take the game back over until the 4th quarter when Ian hit Miles Boykin on a post route for a touchdown. Like, that was a game you're like, boy, they might get upset here. And a lot of it started on the special teams play. So, yeah, something like that could have a big momentum swing. And it's hard for me to fathom a 15, 16-game season where at least one game doesn't have a momentum shift on special teams. So I'm with you on that. I'll buy that. Then buy, sell, hold. A wide receiver will be featured in top 10 plays of the week. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you'll see that. Saw it this year with Malachi. So, yeah, I'll buy that. Absolutely buy that. So we're going to go to part 3 here in a second. But before we go to part 3 of Buy, So Hold, I'm going to ask y'all to do me a big favor. If you go ahead and hit that like button down below, hit that subscribe button, make sure you subscribe to our channel. We'd greatly appreciate that. Make sure you leave us a 5-star review on our podcast page. We'd greatly appreciate that. But as always, the absolute best way to support what we're doing at Irish Breakdown is to become a premium member. And you can see it right now. We've got the wrong banner down there right now. That's my fault. You can see it in the banner below, boards.irishbreakdown.com. Go there. You can become a monthly member, an annual member. Either one works for you. If you want to go above and beyond and you really like what we're doing and you want to support what we're doing, you can also become a club member. You can either be the Shamrock Club, Booster Club member, Shamrock Club, Blue Club, or Gold Club. They're different levels. You do get some free IB Club merch with that if you do join one of those members. You can find that at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, let's kick back off part 3. We got some more from S. Stewart 63. It goes, buy, so hold. Notre Dame will lead the nation in scoring and have a top 5 offense and defense. So if you're going to talk regular season, I could see a scenario in which Notre Dame leads the nation in scoring in the regular season. I could definitely see that. I mean, they finished last year number 3 in the regular season. They were behind Indiana, who was ahead of them in the regular season. Indiana fell below them in the postseason because Notre Dame didn't play a postseason game. And Notre Dame was behind North Texas at 45.1. The year before, the leading scoring team was 43.9. Miami, 23, was 45.5. Mike Denbrock's LSU offense. In 2022, Tennessee was at 46.1. In 2021, it was Ohio State at 45.7. In 2020, I mean, count 2020. 2019, LSU at 48.4. So, I mean, it's going to basically be between 43 to 48 points per game is what you're going to need to lead the nation. Notre Dame was at 42 last year, and I think their offense could and should be even better this year. So I'll buy that they have a chance to do that. I don't know that, again, I don't know that I would bet on it, but they have a chance to do that. Will they get it? I don't know. What I'm confident in saying, though, is that I do think that they will finish in the top 5 in scoring offense. I'm very confident in that. Will they do that in scoring defense? That's a different question. The good news is the schedule this year when it comes to offensive teams is not great. There's not a lot of great offenses that Notre Dame faces this year. Miami will be a really, really, really good offense. SMU should be a pretty good offense. You know, Navy and BYU. After that, there's not a lot of offenses that I feel a lot of great confidence in. They're going to score a ton of points. So it's certainly possible for Notre Dame to do that. But you know, that's going to result in quite an improvement for Chris Ash. I mean, they finished 10th this year, and to get into the top 5, they'd have to shave over 3 points off of their total. It's possible, but he's obviously got some things he's going to have to prove. But it's certainly possible. Also forgot to mention, obviously, here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel. So I forgot to I forgot to thank our partners for that. You can always see that logo down there with them. They've been our partners all season and then on through the off season. So we appreciate their support. So I apologize about not getting that in there here in part 3 of the show, but we're back to it. S. Stewart 63 buys a hold. One of the linebackers will be a finalist for the Butkus Award. Man, you know what? I'm going to buy that because I do think that one of the things that we're going to see from Chris Ash's defense, and I could be completely wrong on this, I do think we're going to see the linebackers used to attack the football more this year. Again, that's just a prediction that I'm making. I hope I'm right. And because that's part of the reason you want to go out and have a Francis Brew and a Tion Gray and bring back Jason Onye and bring back Armo Mukum is because you're going to have bigger guys that are going to eat up space. What's the point of eating up space? It's to let your linebackers attack downhill, attack the ball, attack the run game, blitz the quarterback, eat up blocks so they can run free. And in that instance, I could certainly see that. So whether that's Drake Bowen having like just a monster year, like a Manti Te'o type year, 100+ tackles, 8 to 10 tackles for loss, some key interceptions, some big plays, or if it's like if Kingston's able to play the whole year, Kingston could maybe be number 2 in tackles, but have a lot of sacks that he gets because he's part of the third down package, something like that. I could see part of it. So yes, I'll buy that one of them will be a finalist. I think it's been, 6 years now since 6 years since Notre Dame's had a Butkus. No, hold on. So Wusu Koromo was 20. Yeah, he was in 2020 was his last year. So you had Manti in 12, Jalen in 15, and then Owusu in 20. So yeah, we're past that stretch where Notre Dame's had a Butkus Award winner in past years. So they're due. All right. Good stuff here. Got Bayside Tiger. Buy one, sell one, hold one. Positions that will benefit the most from spring competition, assuming there's an open competition for fun. Offensive line, D tackle, wide receiver. That's a great question. I mean, they're all, to me, they'll all benefit from competition. So I need to say that, like, before I'll respect your buy one, sell one, hold one submission. But before I do that, all 3 of these need competition this spring. Need it. It's going to make them all better. It's going to make sure that the best guys are in the starting lineup and in the rotation, and the best guys are in the right spots. It's going to create more accountability for the guys that do win starting jobs. Like, hey, man, remember, you barely won the starting job, so you better go out there and play well because this guy's waiting in the wings for you not to play to the level you need to play to. They'll all benefit. What'll benefit the most? So the one I'm going to sell is defensive tackle, simply because I think whoever's in that competition anyway will play. You're going to see 5-6 D tackles this year. And there's a lot more proven nature to the D tackles, which is why I don't think a competition there is as impactful as what it will be at receiver, where there's a lot less proven nature behind the top 2. You're going to start someone at receiver next year in 11 personnel that hasn't proven themselves at college. Whether you start Francis Brew, Tion Gray, or Jason Onye or Elijah Hughes, there's a level of provenness to all 4 of those guys. So unless an Armel Mukum or a freshman or Sean Sevillano or Chris Burgess, that would actually be a legitimate one, unless somebody like that steps up and earns a starting job or a number 2 job, I don't think that you have the need for the provenness. Now, if those guys do step up, that's great. You have to beat out a proven player. It means even more to you at that point in time. But I don't think it's needed as much as the other 2 positions. I'm going to hold wide receiver. It's a very important thing. But again, your top 2 guys are somewhat decided. You need to figure out what's going to happen after that. The reason I'm going to go offensive line number 1 is because I don't think there's a single position on this football team whose emergence this offseason is more important than the offensive line. Whether we're talking about getting the right guys in the right positions, whether we're talking about making sure the right 5 are on the field, even if we don't always agree. Like, let's say this. If Anthony Knapp is starting at left tackle next year, there are some people on this chat, and including myself, who will be like, if there was no real competition to allow someone to prove themselves at left tackle, not to beat Anthony Knapp out, but more so to prove that they're capable of holding that job and locking that job down and playing well, then you can move Anthony Knapp inside, where I think there are people on the staff that view him as better suited, but you're not going to move him if somebody doesn't force you to move him. If you don't give someone a chance to do that, then he's locked in at left tackle. And I think that limits you. So even if it's something like that, but even if he stays at left tackle, if there's a real competition for left guard, right guard, center, whatever, right tackle, depending on what you're going to do with Gerby, I think that makes your line better. Don't just plug and play the guys that ended the year last year. If Sullivan Absher goes out there this spring and wins the left guard job because he's the best guy for the job, great. But make him win it. Don't just hand it to him. Same with Joe Otting at center. If Ashton Craig's not out there. Yeah, Joe started the last, 5 games of the year last year, but don't just hand it to him. There was a question earlier about Cam Herron. If Cam Herron's out there balling, then let Cam Herron have that opportunity. What I said was, I don't need to push Cam Herron. But if Cam Herron goes into the spring and he's just outperforming Joe Otting, then he should have that job. If Will Black is outperforming, some of the veteran players, Chris Tarrick, Sullivan Absher, Joe Otting, whoever, then you got to find a home for him, even if it's a guard. I would rather it be tackle, but even if it's a guard, as long as you got your best 5 on the field, that's better than what we've seen in recent years. Ideally, you'd have your best 5 in their best spots, but beggars can't be choosers. But as long as it's your best 5. So to me, it's Knapp, a healthy Ashton Craig, Gerby Lambert, and Charles Jagasaw, and then whoever that 5th guy is. Now, where do they play those guys? That's up for debate. Because it could be a scenario where Joe Otting or Cam Herron proves themselves to be the 5th best guy, and you just move Ashton Craig to guard. That could be it. It could be Sullivan Absher proves himself, and then you've got to move one of Gerby or Jagasaw to tackle. So there's all types of scenarios where you can look at it and say, they got to get the best 5 on the field, and then get the best 5 on the field in the spots where they can play to their maximum potential. If Joe Rudolph allows that to happen this year, this offense will be the greatest we've ever seen at Notre Dame in our life. I mean, in our lifetimes, there's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it, because there's elite quarterback, you've got talented running backs, big-time talent at receiver, but that unit right there is the one that's held this offense from being even better than it could have been and should have been the last couple of years. And if Joe Rudolph has open competitions, real competitions, and he's willing to say, hey, everything's on the table, because we have guys coming back, we've got some young guys emerging, everything's on the table. Anthony Knapp's going to start for me somewhere. But where? I'm open to that being somewhere other than left tackle. If he's got that mindset, then I think this offensive line's got a chance to be really special in 26. Really, really special. All right, let's move on to some more questions here, some more submissions here from Bayside Tiger. Buy one, sell one, hold one. I love this one, by the way. So buy one, sell one, hold one. Best comedy duo. Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels. That would obviously be the 2 Dumb and Dumbers. Chris Farley and David Spade, who played together not only on Saturday Night Live, but they were in Black Sheep together. And then, of course, the greatest was Tommy Boy. And then Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan. Let me think about that for a sec. So, of the 2, I'd probably buy Chris Farley and David Spade, because I still think Tommy Boy is one of the greatest comedies ever made. I think that's absolutely hilarious. Some of the others weren't as great, but they were also very good on Saturday Night Live, and I think they were a great compliment, personality-wise. They were great. I would hold Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan. Now, part of me initially I wanted to buy that one, because the thing about them is they made more good movies together. The Rush Hours, like Tommy Boy was better than any of the Rush Hours, but I thought all 3 of the Rush Hours were really good. And I thought Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan were a surprisingly great duo. I'm going to sell Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels, because you could argue that Dumb and Dumber was the best movie of all of these, but they made 2 movies together that I'm aware of. And the second Dumb and Dumber was just incredibly stupid. It wasn't dumb, it was stupid. I did not enjoy it at all. The first one was tremendous, exceptional. So that's why I would sell that one. So that's where I'm going to go. But yeah, like that, I just think if you take away, now listen, I'll say this: if you take away Saturday Night Live and the stuff that Chris Farley and David Spade did together on Saturday Night Live, and you just look at movies, then I'm buying Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan. But what put it over the top for me, as I've thought through this, is the Chris Farley David Spade one. That's why I would buy that one. Hold Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan, and then sell Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels. All right. Faith Family Indy Forever. Buy one, sell one, hold one. A little fun for history buffs who also appreciate beautiful aircraft. You win a special lottery and you choose to own a vintage, fully restored World War II fighter plane. Your choices are the Lockheed P-38 Lightning, the North American P-51 Mustang, and the Supermarine Spitfire. So first of all, I'm going to have to hold the Spitfire. That is a tremendous plane, and it's a tremendous looking plane. It is a very vintage plane, and it was obviously but it was a British plane. And while I love the Spitfire, I have to go with an American plane first. Also, the P-51 was a tremendous, tremendous fighter. Question for those who know more about planes than I do: at the end of Top Gun Maverick, was he flying a Mustang? Was that a P-51 Mustang that he had at the end of that? But I'm curious about that. But either way, that's similar to the Spitfire in look. I like the look better. It's an American plane, and it was a monster in World War II. So Zerk Knight said, yes, that was a P-51. So I thought it looked like it, that he was restoring and then flew with his lady at the end of it. So I think that one. And then the P-38 Lightning was a great plane in World War II. I just don't like the look of it. It just looked funky to me. Like, I don't know that I'd want to like own that plane, like with the two sides kind of going down. And it looks like it's like kind of like three parts to it. That one just aesthetically doesn't look as cool to me. It was a great bomber in World War II, but the fighter jets are the ones I like a little bit more. And so I would go with that one. So the P-51 that's one heck of a pretty aircraft, man. Now, I don't know how to fly, but if I did and I could have one of these, I'd have to go with the Mustang. Podcast like Beedrisk today. So I got to first of all say this to the person who's got this name. I emailed him after they signed up for the board, relatively new member. And so Zerk Knight, I'm fighter. Yes, fighter, not a bomber. That's the B-51. But yes, I said bomber. I know it's a fighter. So my fault on that. I love Zerk Knight's a airplane person. So I love that. Love that stuff. But if you're going to have this name, you have to be in all the buy so holds. That's pressure. Because like if you're going to have the name podcast like Beedrisk today, you have to come correct on the buy so holds every week. So that's just the pressure that's on you there. So he says Notre Dame will have 2 buy so hold. Notre Dame will have 2 top 10 draft picks in 2027. So as of right now, I would buy that. So as of right now, I think we're going to see Leonard Moore as a top 10 pick. And as of right now, I mean, I'm projecting that we'll see CJ Carr in the top 10 as well. Now, I would love it if CJ Carr came back in 2027. But right now, I'm working with the assumption I'm just going to enjoy 2026 like it's his last year. And if he chooses to come back, that's awesome. I would love that. But if he doesn't, then I'm not going to be disappointed. That's just the way. That's what we should all do. We should all treat 2026 like this is the last we're going to see Leonard Moore and CJ Carr, and just enjoy it. And then if one of them or 2 of them choose to come back for some reason in 2027, then we can enjoy them for another season. But that's how I'm going to be. So if they both go pro, then yes, I would project that they're both going to be top 10 draft picks. And look, one of the reasons that I'm more optimistic about this team than I am other past Notre Dame teams, even more so, and I like some other past teams, is the number of day one draft pick talent on this team is very high. I just mentioned Leonard Moore and CJ Carr. But would it shock any of you if Boubacar has like a 16 tackle for loss, 11 sack season, and he's a top 10 draft pick? It wouldn't shock me. Would it shock anyone if Gerby Lambert at some point in time down the road, may not be 27, maybe 28 draft, becomes an elite tackle and is a top 10 to 12 to 15 draft pick? Would it shock anyone if Charles Jagasol's healthy the next 2 years, plays 30 games, 15 each year, dominates, and he's a first-round draft pick? Would it shock anyone if in a couple years Bryce Young's a first-round draft pick? If Tig Johnson's a first-round draft pick late in the first round, obviously he's a safety. Would it shock anyone if Quincy Porter down the road develops into a first-round draft pick, Ian Premer, Anthony Knapp? There's so much first-round talent on this roster. And I didn't even get into the incoming freshman class. That's what really kind of gets me excited for this team. Is there's the level of elite talent on this team is as great as we've seen since the early 90s, in my opinion. And there's going to be future first-round draft picks that don't play a lot this year, which is kind of exciting. Yeah. All right. Faith, family. We already got that one. Sorry. Podcast like Beedris today says, in no particular order, the first 3 picks of the 2027 NFL draft will be CJ Carr, Dante Moore, and Arch Manning. All right. That's a good question. I have to think about that one. I'll say yes. Since those are my top 3 quarterbacks that I have in coming back this year, I don't think they will be the 3 best players, but I think they'll be the 3 best draft picks, because there's going to be 5 or 6 potentially first-round draft picks next year at quarterback. Like, it's going to be a really deep draft class at quarterback. And as always, there tends to be that early run. So if you're a team picking second and you don't need a quarterback, then there's going to be this huge, like, group of teams that are or these huge offers are going to come to you from teams that are trying to jump up and get one of those 3 quarterbacks. So, and look, our Ohio State fans, Jeremiah Smith says, hold up. With all due respect, Archer, even you, as biased as you are towards your player, will admit that if we're talking about the NFL draft, if there's 3 franchise quarterbacks in the next draft, they will go 1, 2, 3. That's just how it goes. We can argue whether it should be that way, and I don't think it should be. I think quarterbacks get overdrafted all the time, but that's the way it will be. So that's kind of, yeah, I would say that. You're not gonna, if you need a quarterback, you're not gonna pick a receiver before him. And you're just not. It's. I mean, what was it a couple years ago? Let me see here. What was it? Give me a second. So let's go by year. Let's see here. Let's go by round. Let's go round 1. What was it? 2 or 3 years ago? Yeah, it was 2 years ago. 3 years ago. It's 24 draft. You had Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May went 1, 2, and 3. There were people that said Marvin Harrison was the best prospect in that draft class, or people said Joe Walt was the best player in that draft class. Malik Neighbors was an elite player, but they still went after those top 3 guys. Because why? Because you're always going to take draft class. So, and he says, have we ever seen 3 straight QB star draft? Yeah, literally 2024. That's the one I was looking for. Yeah, Caleb Williams went number 1, Jaden Daniels went number 2, and Drake May went number 3. And I think we saw one not that long ago where at least, yeah, we saw it again in 2021. Number 1 pick, Trevor Lawrence. Number 2 pick, Zach Wilson. Number 3 pick, Trey Lance. So literally, 5, 4, 3, 2. In the last 5 drafts, twice, we've seen 3 quarterbacks go in the first 3 picks. So you can say it's a small draft size, sample size as you want. The most recent is always the one that matters most. How quarterbacks were drafted in the previous 100 years of NFL drafts, there weren't that many, is irrelevant to how they're drafted now. How quarterbacks were drafted 20 years ago is completely irrelevant to how they're drafted now. And right now, in an era where quarterbacks constantly get overdrafted, you've had 2 of the last 5 drafts have had 3 quarterbacks taken in the top top 3 picks. So that should make you kind of say something. In the years where that wasn't the case, it's because there wasn't another quarterback like that. In 2023, you had Bryce Young go number 1. You had C.J. Stroud go number 2. Anthony Richardson went number 4. And he wasn't even that good. And he still went number 4. So that's how the NFL is. You can say sample size all you want. That's what it is. You can say somebody else, Jeremiah Smith is the best player. Irrelevant. That's not how the NFL drafts. And my response is not about what I feel. It's about what the reality is. And the reality is if there's a quarterback that people view as a potential franchise quarterback, he will get picked early. Does anyone think Cam Ward was the best player in last year's draft? Not many people, I think that. Did anybody think that Bryce Young was a better draft prospect overall than a Will Anderson, a Devon Witherspoon? No, people didn't think that. It's because that's what they were looking for at the position. From a value, the quarterback is going to go high if they view it as a franchise quarterback. That's the way the NFL drafts now. And teams are just, they don't want to be the team that picked Daniel Jones over Josh Allen, or the team that picked, Mitch Trubisky over Deshaun Watson or Patrick Mahomes. That's just the way it goes now. And so it's not about sample. That's what the NFL draft is right now. I don't like it. It's one of the reasons I don't like watching NFL, but that's the reality of it. So it doesn't matter who the best player in the draft is. There were people that argued Kyle Hamilton was the 2 or 3 best draft picks in the draft coming out, players in the draft coming out. But where was he picked? 14, because it's about positional value. There are people already saying that Jeremiah Love's the best player in this draft class. He won't get picked in the top 3 because he plays running back. So like it or not, and I don't, that's the reality of where the NFL is right now. And I've pointed this out before. When was the last time a receiver was picked number 1 overall? I'm just saying, you don't see receivers get picked that high. You just don't. Yeah, Travis Hunter got picked 2nd last year because he plays both ways. Marvin Harrison was picked at 4. Here's the highest the receivers have been drafted in recent drafts. Just only receivers. 4, 20, 8, 5. That was Jamar Chase. 12, 25, 24, 5, 15, 4, 4, 8, 5, 4, 22. So I'm already all the way down to 2010, and we haven't seen a receiver drafted higher than 4th. The last time a receiver was picked higher than 4th was Calvin Johnson. What year was that? 2007. Calvin Johnson was number 2. I think Keyshawn's the only one that's ever been picked 1, correct? Did Keyshawn get picked number 1 overall? Or am I completely misremembering? Yeah, Keyshawn's picked number 1996 was the last time a receiver was taken number 1 overall. 2007 is the last time a receiver was picked in the top 3. So, yeah, you can talk about, if you want to talk about sample sizes, that's a pretty big flipping sample size for you that Jeremiah Smith won't be picked in the top 3. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just telling you the way that it goes. All right. Podcast like B. Drisk today also says, if I were to tell you that these 3 players will be drafted in the first round of next year's draft, buy one, sell one, hold one, in terms of most meaningful, important to Notre Dame winning the championship. Let's see here. Boubacar Traore, Anthony Knapp, DJ McKinney. So I'm going to sell DJ McKinney because I don't think that he'll be the most important. A second cornerback is not going to be more important than your number 1 starter. Then it comes down to Boubacar and Anthony Knapp. I would say Boubacar. I think if you have an elite first-round draft pick at defensive end, that is going to have an even bigger impact than even Anthony Knapp, wherever he plays, whether it's tackle, guard, center, wherever he plays. I think that's so important. And if Notre Dame's going to win a title, I think that's something that is going to play a huge role in it. Is Boubacar having that breakout season? Now, part of that too is where in the first round. So, like if Anthony Knapp develops to do like a top 10 pick and Boubacar's picked 32nd, then obviously Anthony Knapp might have a bigger pick. So there has to be some level of context that's needed here to really give that answer the way that I'd want to give that answer, because I would need to know where, but I have to think that that would be Boubacar. Top two are good. I'd be curious kind of what you on the chat think about this. Is an interesting one about if they're all picked in the first round, who has the biggest impact? I still think it's Boubacar. I think Anthony Knapp being a first round draft pick would be huge. Now, if you were to tell me, like, put Charles Jagasol in there, then we might have a different conversation. Because, like, think about the kind of year he would need to have to be a first round draft pick. But of those questions, I would say that is where I would go. And somebody in the chat said, it depends on who is in the top three. If the Raiders in the top three, they won't be taking a quarterback next year. Correct. They will be trading out of the top three and getting a bunch of draft picks, and someone else will be picking a quarterback in their place. That's the whole point. Because you can trade and you will see trades. So if those, now this is also thinking that all these guys are what we think they're going to be. That's the other part. Okay. More from Ball Peen Shillelagh. Had a very foggy commute today. BISO hold that dense fog is worse to play in than on-off heavy rain. Yeah, it's definitely worse because you can't see. Do you guys remember, what was it? It was the Eagles and the Bears. Was that a playoff game? I think it was a playoff game, and they played in this just terrible fog. You couldn't see anything. Like in rain, you kind of know in rain, you have a rain game plan. Like, look, so 2002, we were playing, I was at Muhlenberg. We were playing our rival, Moravian. If we won, we knew we had a shot to get an at-large bid in the playoffs. And Moravian was the rival of Muhlenberg at the time. And it was rainy all week. It had rained in the pregame. The field was just slop. We knew it. And so we had a game plan going in on how to execute in that situation. And then during pregame with my running backs, I spent the whole pregame working on footwork on a slippery condition and how to make people miss in a slippery condition. Keeping a wider base, not trying to make sudden cuts, emphasizing choppiness, emphasizing a wider base. Because, like, you can do like a little quick 4 or 5 step chop and kind of stop, and the guy's going to go running right by you. And we went out there, our running back ran for over 100 yards, had like 30 carries. We could game plan for it. We won 8-0. We could game plan for it. Fog, you can't game plan for. Like, there's no fog game plan. You can't prepare for it. You basically have to say, hey, we're just going to run the ball. I mean, and there's just so you can't see, and so I would say that like a very foggy day, dense fog is bad. Some of you Bears fans, can you guys, because I know there's Bears fans in the chat, the game where it was in Soldier Field was the Bears and Eagles, super foggy. Was that a playoff game? I feel like that was a playoff game, but I could be wrong on that. So you guys in the chat remind me about that one, because I thought it was, yeah. You have to remind me of that one. So that was a really rough game. Really rough game. I would much rather play in the rain. Now I will say this: the one thing that gives an advantage to players in today's era than players in that era is, again, we're assuming we're playing outdoors, because obviously if you're indoors it doesn't matter. But then you had to signal everything in, or you had to run somebody in with a play. Now you at least still have the communication in the headsets. You can at least get play calls in easier than you were then. 1988 versus Eagles division playoff. Thank you for that. But I remember that one. That was a crazy day. Those Eagles teams were fun to watch back then. Ball Peen Shillelagh did I miss one? Did he just? Okay, I missed one. From Ball Peen Shillelagh, at least 3 of the recent assistant analysts hired on this offseason become position coaches within the next 3 years. Yeah, sure. Definitely. I mean, that's the whole point, that you take a job like this. I think the most recent one that I saw, there's Chris Jones coming from Wake Forest on defense. You had Sean Shivers, who will be on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, the whole point of you coming to a place like this is to get a jump as a position coach. Yeah. Now, if you're asking if they'll become position coaches at Notre Dame, that might be a little bit different. There is an analyst. I think he's an analyst. Maybe he's a GA on the current team that I could see being a position coach at Notre Dame the next time that job comes open. I could see a scenario of, let's say that Notre Dame can keep Trey Reader for 2 more years and Brian Jean Marie, does really well as a linebackers coach, and it gets him a D coordinator job in a couple years or an NFL job in a couple years. I could see Trey Reader succeeding him based on how he's thought of in the coaching office. Like, they view him as like a really wicked smart, like, rising star. Most of the others, it would probably be somewhere else. But yeah, I mean, I think I can see all those guys moving on. That's the whole reason you come here. And it usually doesn't take you 3 years. You usually can get them in a couple. That's a good one. Ballpeen Shillelagh says, Bice hold, having a quarterback who can execute accurate quick kicks is an advantage that should be used more often for teams who have it. I don't know. I don't know. I personally don't think it matters a whole lot in today's era where punt returning is not as big of a deal. This used to be a thing where, you would do this more because you didn't want a team to return the ball. The other thing is, like, okay, it gives you a chance to pin a team inside the 10 because you can quick kick it and all that kind of stuff. But I think the way that people view going for it on 4th down now, I think that's more of the thing that you want to be more effective on. But is it an advantage? Is it an advantage? Yes, I buy that it's an advantage. Should it be used more often? That I sell. I don't know that you should use it more often than you already do if you have that ability. So I'll sell that. Son of Donald. Buy so hold. Notre Dame will rank in the top 3 in the country in turnover margin. Well, they should. I'm pulling up. They were some. Where were they? Give me a second. I'm looking up where they were this past year. This past year, Notre Dame ranked 7th in turnover margin at 13. Every team played at least one more game than them. The team right above them, Texas Tech, played 14 games. They had one more turnover than Notre Dame, so Notre Dame had more per game. Actually, let's look at it this way. They were 4th in the country in turnovers per game this year. I think the offense will continue to not turn the ball over a lot. The question is going to be, and this is going to be the constant thing we talk about all offseason, is will Chris Ash continue doing the things that we saw him do in the last 8 games last year, or will he revert back to what we saw before? Now, when I say what we saw before, I'm not saying he's going to go back to an offense that's going to allow them to give up 41 points a game and get ripped up by A&M and Purdue. I just mean more of the philosophy that's more of a bend but don't break, keep everything in front of you, don't give up the big play, but also don't worry about getting a bunch of negatives and tackles for loss. Like, that is more of what I'm referring to. Read and react, flow. That can be in a very effective defense, but it's not going to be a defense that, to me, is as dominant as the one that they can be if they're willing to be more aggressive. And so that's if that's the what we're discussing here, then I would say yes. If they're aggressive, they will definitely be top 3 in the country in turnover margin. They were 4th last year, and they were 4th last year with the defense spending 3 games not doing anything to be an aggressive, disruptive team. They did that off 9 games. So I certainly think they could be that again in 2026 if Chris Ash is willing to be aggressive with that defense. No doubt about it. Second one, I love this one. Buy sold. IB is the best community in the sports world. Thanks, y'all. I would absolutely agree with that. I'll buy that one, no question, because that isn't about us. That's about you guys. And I absolutely adore the community we've built, and in so many different ways. I really, really do. Let's get a couple more here. And we had some that popped up that weren't part of that came late. So we had some people that popped in questions after 1 o'clock. So we'll still try to get to those here real quick. But got a couple more here from, actually, I think that is no, it's not. I know I got a couple more here. There we go. Son of Donald. says, you believe me if I tell you that you had two of my little brothers and I started the Heisman chant after the Syracuse game, which drew on camera reaction from both J Love and Freeman. I'll believe you. Yeah, sure. Why not? Why would you make something up like that? Yeah, that sounds pretty awesome. Sounds pretty awesome. Donnie Moe, buy one, sell one, hold one. Best overall offensive scheme design. Chip Long 2017, Tommy Rees 2020, Mike Denbrock 2025. So there's a difference between good scheme and good play calling. Good scheme is given. That's just it's the X's and O's. You can have great scheme and not be a great play caller because you don't know the whens and the hows. What makes Mike Denbrock, to me, the best play caller of those three, or the best OC of those three, is he's the best play caller. I don't know that I think Mike Denbrock has the best scheme. And honestly, I'd probably sell that one because I think what they do is he's got a great feel for play calling. I think if Mike Denbrock had a better offensive line coach, that the run, like you guys know I'm not a big Jeff Quinn fan. Jeff Quinn was not a very good offensive line coach. Jeff Quinn is actually a pretty decent run game designer. So, like, he was good as Brian Kelly's offensive coordinator because he would design the run games. He was pretty good at that. And then Tommy had really good pass game scheme. They didn't have a quarterback that could always execute it. They had a pretty good pass game scheme. And I thought Chip Long was had very good scheme. And then obviously had Coach Heastan designing their run game. So I'm actually going to go in order of what you provided. I'm going to buy Chip Long in 17 because I thought he had a very good knack for play calling. He had a very good knack for trick plays. I mean, thinking of I've talked about this. This is 2018, but just thinking of the USC game in 2018, where USC comes out. I've explained this before. They come out, they're playing downhill, they're playing aggressive, they're blitzing. They think they have a read on what Notre Dame's run game is, and to a degree, they did. If Notre Dame pulled their guards or pulled a guard, they knew they were running to the direction of the guard, and they were flying to the ball. And so then what Chip Long did is he saw it, and they made a quick adjustment, and they pulled their guards to the right and ran a sweep to the left with Dexter Williams with Cole Kmet leading him outside. Had to make one guy miss, and Dex goes for a 50-plus yard touchdown. I mean, just a tremendous play call. Like, just to have that knack for let's go with this. And think of the success he had with jet sweeps with Braden Lindsey. I think of the reverse call against USC. I think of his play calling early against USC in that game. I would actually say Chip Long's best scheme was 2018, not 2017. But even in 2017, I thought the run game design in 2017 was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Tommy Rees in 2020, similar deal. I just think they were a little bit limited on some of the things they could do schematically because of, they didn't have some big time playmakers in some certain spots, but really good run game design, really good play action game design. And then I'd say Denbrock I'd put third in design. But what makes Denbrock so good is his knack for play calling more so than scheme. I actually think he could adopt some things into his scheme, even pass game, which he's more responsible for, that I think would be very, very helpful for this offense. And when you combine that with his knack for play calling, I think it would be dynamic. But I would say that play calling, I'd put Denbrock first. Scheme, design, I'd probably put him second or third on that one. It's debatable between him and Tommy at that second spot. For design, Chip Long, I think, takes the cake. What we saw him do at Notre Dame. He had the best design. Super Indy, due to increased scholarship numbers and depth, Indy will give up way less garbage points and therefore have more shutouts. Sell. I don't think the increased scholarship limits will have a big impact on that. We saw that last year. Notre Dame still had better players in the field than other teams. It's just about what are you calling and what are you executing. So no, I sell that. Even as good as as the defense is, you're still not going to have a lot of shutouts. I mean, Indiana played a very soft schedule this year, and they had one shutout all year, and that was against an FCS team. They held They gave up 9 points to Kennesaw State, 6 points to UCLA, 3 points to Purdue, 7 to Wisconsin, 3 to Alabama. You're still going to give up some points. More shutouts, maybe one. Notre Dame, did Notre Dame have any shutouts this year? I don't think Notre Dame had a single shutout this year. Am I misremembering this? Did they shut anybody out this year? No, they didn't. They only held 3 teams to less than 10 points. So that's quite a big change. Quite a big change from what we saw the year before, where they had 4 teams in the regular season less than 10 points, including 2 at 3. Last year, Notre Dame, the lowest points they gave up all year was 7. They gave up a touchdown in every game they played in. So, yeah, they're going to have to show me something. Going to have to absolutely show something. So, all right. Next one says Notre Dame will have 2 or more shutouts this year. Kind of goes along with the other one. I'm going to say no to that. I'm going to say no, they won't have any shutouts next year. I got to see Chris Ash do 1. That's what I want to see. All right, so I'm going to pull those off real quick, and I'm going to pull up, just as we wrap the show up, I'm going to pull up the message board and bring up some of these. There's a couple questions that popped up here at the end that I want to get to. I just saw that they're there. I haven't had a complete chance to vet them just yet. Just let me just look at them real fast. And let's see here. Give me a second. Let's see here. Okay. All right. So we've got... Just give me 1 second, folks. I'm going to pull these up here real fast. Where are they? Page 2. All right. And so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 super chats here real fast. So let me just make them bigger so you guys can see them, and we'll pull them up. So I'm just going to bring that up real fast, and then we'll end with these ones that were just put up on the board. So let's go here. All right. So we have one from, let's see, then you get them a little bit bigger. Let me get a little bit bigger for you guys. All right. So we've got one here from, okay. So Cousin Eddie's mobile home says, Beisel hold, Notre Dame will have at least one offensive and defensive player that will make an impact on this year's team, similar to the way Tay Johnson did. Is that a newcomer? I guess I don't understand the question. At least one will make an impact on this year's team, similar to the way Tay Johnson did. By? I guess I don't really understand the question, to be honest with you. I don't. Beisel hold, Marcus Freeman could be Notre Dame's most impactful coach since Leahy by year 2030. If he's here by year 2030, then that's certainly possible. But he'd have to win 2 titles, because right now the most impactful coach since Leahy's Eric Parsegian. Number 2 is Lou Holtz. Number 3 is Marcus Freeman. Actually, you could argue number 3 is Brian Kelly. Number 4, Marcus Freeman. I would argue Marcus Freeman's had a bigger impact than Brian Kelly, but that's a different argument for a different day. I wouldn't even argue with you if you want to say Brian Kelly, because of longevity, and Brian Kelly inherited a better situation than people think, but it was still not an easy one. But so I'd say potential to be a buy, but he's got a lot to prove. He's got to win a title first. And then Beisel hold, Notre Dame's most impactful position coach will be Charlie Partridge by end of the year. It's certainly possible. I think if they win a title, it'll be either him or Joe Rudolph. But I think the Charlie Partridge hire was tremendous. I think it was Marcus Freeman's best hire of the offseason. And I like the other 2 hires, but I think that was an absolute grand slam home run hire. And the reason I would put it above the other 2, we've seen really good linebacker coaches at Notre Dame. And thanks to Mike Mickens, we saw a really good elite defensive line coach or secondary coach. What we haven't seen a head coach do is go outside of his system and bring in an elite D-line coach. Mike Elson turned out to be a really good D-line coach, but he came with Kelly. from another place. We haven't seen a coach who loses a position coach go outside and say, hey, we've got to go hire a big-time coach. And they went out and hired a big-time coach. So that was a monster hire, in my opinion. We got a super chat from Joe Alt Superfan. It says Notre Dame Miami will go down in similar fashion to Notre Dame USC in 2023. No, I'm going to sell that. I would love that, dude. I would love that so much if that game went down the same way it went in 2023, where Notre Dame just runs them off the field, just dominates. It's always possible. You know, I mean, the game in 2017 was the opposite of that. Miami's not a 33-point better team than Notre Dame was in 2017. But sometimes the game just goes like that. Is it possible that it happens? Yes. I'm not going to predict it, though. I think Miami's going to be a very good team in 2026. Very good team. All right, next one. Notre Dame holding the pain of the loss of past season drama will see the Irish start the game off hot. This is him following up on what he said. This pair with the annual Cristobal collapse will see the Irish jump off to a big lead in the game via turnovers and or big plays on offense, like Williams picked 3 picks in the first half of 2023. Miami eventually gaining momentum would see their hopes crushed after the Irish hit a gut-stabbing play like JP's kick return after Brendan Rice's TD, ultimately sealing the deal and ending the day with a convincing Irish win. I would love that. Nothing would make me happier. And it's certainly possible because I wouldn't have predicted that in the USC game either. But I think this Miami team's a lot more talented than that USC team was on both sides of the ball. Sorry, my Rita's getting a little bit restless, so I just got to get her to calm down. I got 2 left. We got one here from from JP's is for Notre Dame. JP, thank you for this one, buddy. Notre Dame wins a national championship in college football before the Notre Dame men's college basketball team. That's an easy buy. The college basketball team has never won a national championship. So I don't see that. They haven't even made the Final Four since Digger was the coach. So that's an easy one. And then Notre Dame makes it to the Sweet 16 in the NCAA men's college basketball championship tournament. So I don't know that they're even going to make the tournament. They've got a lot of work to do if they're going to make the tournament, I would believe. And then the last one from Milk Dude 1967. The Notre Dame coaching staff will embrace the leave no doubt motto and stop allowing garbage time touchdowns. Man, that from your lips to God's ears, that would be so amazing. And it's really simple. When you put your backups in the game, let them play ball. I mean, let them play ball. That's really the big key. Let them play ball. Turn them loose. And then it's up to them to then go execute. So, yes, I would absolutely love to see that. Absolutely love to see that. So, that's going to do it for today's show, everybody. Thank you all for bearing with me today on the solo show. Obviously, I've got to take drinks. I've got to catch my breath. And I really appreciate y'all's patience in there. I also really appreciate you. When I've asked you guys last week when I do a solo show to really try to keep the chat in line when we're talking about, you guys were great today. This was a great chat. Loved it. A lot of discussion, some debate. You guys helping me out, pointing things that I said wrong or helping answer questions. I said P-38 was a bomber, and Zerk Knight pointed out it was a fighter. Snailed it. Appreciate that. You guys were awesome today, and that's partly what makes this a great community. So you help me get through the show when I can see the engagement and the interaction you guys are going through. And then, of course, what really makes today's show is all the great submissions on Buy Sell Holds, where I greatly, greatly appreciate all you guys did today. Very much so. Andrew, I'm looking forward to seeing that photo that you're talking about. Actually, I don't know if you can put it on the board unless it's like a link to something. You can do that, but you can also email me, and then I can put it on the board. So I appreciate that. Hey, everybody, hit thanks. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast with your friends, not just sharing it on this app, but also telling other Notre Dame friends and family about what we're doing here at Irish Breakdown. Would greatly, greatly appreciate that. If you're listening via podcast, would also appreciate giving us a 5-star review. That would be amazing. Always very helpful. Always appreciate you guys' support for what we're doing here on the podcast, the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by FanDuel. Greatly appreciated. But the best way to support us, as we always say, is to sign up for the message board at boards@irishbreakdown.com. Best way where we get the revenue. It helps us with the community we're building. It's all good stuff. So we really appreciate you guys. Thanks for being with me today. Sean Davis will be back with me tomorrow. We're going to talk about Has Marcus Freeman lived up to expectations so far this season? Yay or nay? Up to this point in time of his career. What are areas he has and what are areas he hasn't? And then we'll have some other preview stuff. And then Wednesday, Trevor will be back with me on Wednesday. We're going to do our midweek rundown. And then Thursday, we're going to get back to position preview. So Friday mailbag. So thanks for being with us today. We'll see you all again here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.